Snow still curtained the courtyards of Winterfell when the first raven arrived, its black wings speckled white, the parchment tied to its leg sealed in Baratheon gold. Sansa Stark broke the wax with steady fingers, her auburn hair pulled back in a simple braid that kept stray strands from whipping across her face in the wind that always seemed to cut through the towers. She read the short message once, then twice, her blue-gray eyes narrowing the way they did when she sensed possibilities hidden beneath plain words. Lord Gendry of House Baratheon, legal son of Robert, now master of Storm's End, sought an audience. Alone, without retainers or knights, beneath the weirwood's crimson leaves. She dismissed the maester and tucked the parchment inside her sleeve. An audience beneath the heart tree was not asked lightly. The old gods bore silent witness to every oath, every betrayal, and every promise made beneath their faces. She strode across the courtyard, boots crunching against packed snow, remembering how the North had shed winter's pallor for Daenerys Targaryen's defeat only months before. It felt a lifetime ago. In truth, the ash at King's Landing had barely cooled when Bran was chosen ruler of the Six Kingdoms, and Sansa was hailed queen in the North. Independence, the price of her family's sacrifices, had been won at last. Yet the freedom tasted thinner, more fragile than she had imagined while captive in King's Landing or kneeling beside Littlefinger's corpse. The North lay bruised, winter-starved villages, broken keeps, widow fields where young boys had fallen to undead blades. The wall stood breached in places, the Night's Watch mere shadows muttering oaths no lord bothered to remember. And south of Moat, Kaelin the Riverland simmered, angry at Lord Edmure's removal and bitter about lords near-starved by levies to fight in wars that Southerners started. The weirwood's face waited, red sap tears frozen on milk-white bark. Sansa pressed gloved fingertips to the rough wood, letting the heart tree's ancient stillness swallow the racing hum of her thoughts. Gendry. The smith boy turned lord, raised up in a storm of dragon fire and rebellion. Though she had glimpsed him only briefly on the shattered battlements after the long night, she remembered the smudges of soot along his jaw and the fervor in his eyes when Arya introduced him. He had looked at the Stark girls not with courtly cunning, but with a craftsman's keen appraisal, as though weighing steel, wondering how much heat and hammering each might bear before they bent or broke. Sansa, who once prayed for gallant princes, had grown to respect such plain appraisal. She heard the crunch of approaching footsteps. Gendry stood alone, cloak of black wool clasped by a yellow-crowned stag. Snowflakes clung to curling hair still damp from travel. He bowed neither stiffly nor too deeply. He knew a queen was still a woman weary of false reverence. "Your Grace," he greeted, voice hoarse from cold and nights on the King's Road. "I'm honored." "Storm's End is far," she replied, studying him. He was broader than before, muscle coiled in arms and shoulders shaped by years at the forge. Yet, when his gaze met hers, humility flickered behind the confident set of his jaw. "Why risk winter to stand beneath gods that are not yours? Because storms carve cliffs, and storms carve men." He tipped his head toward the weirwood. "And because the old gods listen even to bastards who never knew a sept." A quiet acceptance settled between them. Sansa gestured, and they sank to the snow-dusted stone bench before the tree. Ravens watched from branches, heads cocked. Gendry drew a rolled map from his cloak and spread it on his knees. It was a rudimentary sketch of Westeros, drawn by his own hand, ink smudged, coastlines jagged. Yet every holdfast and mill in the Stormlands was marked, as well as abandoned castles between the Trident and White Harbor. "I came not to ask favors," he began. "I came to share a vision. Winter ended the dead, but now famine follows. King Bran's council scrambles to mend roads and barns, but half the coin they send never leaves Old Town or the Reach. The southern lords squabble over tariffs. The Iron Bank circles like vultures." He tapped the north on the map. "Yet here, despite all, there is resolve. Steel in the bones of even the smallest holdfast. People fight for house and hearth, not for feasts at court." "Now, you flatter us," Sansa said, though she felt the proud lift of her chin. "I speak truth." He shifted, pointing south. "Storm's End shares more with Winterfell than with Old Town's marble courts. Our crops are meager, Our land's battered by sea winds, but our folk are hardy and loyal. They remember Robert's rise, proof that birth does not fix a man's path. They remember your brother's honor. And they remember the Dragon Queen who torched the innocents without remorse. A shadow flickered in his gaze. Her own memory flared of scarlet skies above King's Landing. He inhaled. The realm needs a new pillar. Not a single throne forged by swords, but a coalition of stony bastions. My forebears once called our kingdom the Stormlands and the marches of the Dornish marches, a mouthful no bard repeats. But your ancestors carved the north from ice and grief and kept it whole for thousands of years. He met her eyes. Imagine a northern empire spanning Moat Cailin southward through the Trident to Storm's End's cliffs. Not ruled by fear, but knit by shared hardship. Winter's discipline and storm's resilience. Sansa's breaths came visible in the frigid air. She had not expected a proposal of empire. Bran's peace hung by threads. Lords already muttered that the North's independence tempted other regions to break away. Yet something in Gendry's calm audacity thrilled her, as if the wolf inside her bones recognized a kindred wildness. She tested him. Empires devour the small folk first. When iron tides mount and harvests thin, rebellion follows. Now, then we build differently. He rotated the map, showing smaller sigils sketched around each major house. Foxes, cranes, boars, owls. Guild charters and trade leagues. Smiths share methods across provinces. Farmers rotate winter barley and storm barley. Herds graze summer pastures in the crown lands we reclaim. Farmers, not lords, choose where surplus travels. She arched a brow. You sound like a merchant prince. I'm a blacksmith who listened when traders drank near my forge, he said, smiling ruefully. Steel teaches you that strength alone is brittle. You must temper with flexibility. A gust rattled branches above. Red leaves fluttered like bleeding fingers. The gods, Sansa thought, might be listening after all. She took the map, folding it carefully. I will consider your vision, but a northern empire is not forged on parchment. It will require alliances beyond our borders, and proof of purpose. Gendry rose. Snow swirled around him. Then I'll bring proof. Gather your bannermen at the next moon's turn. I'll return with Storm's End's fleet at White Harbor, laden with grain from Tarth and timber from Massey's Hook. Let them taste coalition before they pledge oaths. Then? Sansa stood as well, realizing his offer was not just for land, but for partnership. You risk your ships to treacherous seas in winter. Storm's End has weathered worse, he answered. And I will be aboard the lead galley. A captain must share the danger he commands. Her voice softened. May the winds favor you, Lord Baratheon. His gaze lingered a heartbeat too long. Respectful yet tinged with something warmer. He bowed once, then departed into the swirling white, leaving bootprints that Sansa watched until the snow refilled them. Word of Gendry's bold approach spread through Winterfell like mead fire. Some lords scoffed. A Baratheon forging empire with a Stark? Others remembered Robert's hammer-smashing Targaryen steel and muttered that the stag's antlers and the direwolf's fangs together might gore any southern lion. Lady Aelys Karstark, lean and flint-eyed, advised caution. Lord Wyman Manderly practically sang at the prospect of open trade routes, bypassing Lannisport tariffs. Even the wildling Tormund Giantsbane, drinking deep from Manderly's cellars as northern envoy, boomed his approval. The Smith King has a chest like granite and a head full of storms. He'll charge the gates of Valhalla with naught but a hammer. Sansa listened, weighing each counsel. She walked the battlements nightly, ice crunching beneath her skirts while wolves howled beyond the walls. Creatures who understood survival demanded adaptation. She recalled Cersei's sneer at the Purple Wedding, Marjorie's gentle manipulations, Littlefinger's poisoned whispers. She had learned that power came not only from force, but from shaping perceptions. An empire must be more than armies, it must sing to the hopes of its people. On the 29th night, the watchman's horn blared. Lights flickered along the distant horizon, torches upon masts riding waves under a half-frozen moon. Sansa mounted her raven feather cloak and descended to the courtyard just as the first Stormlander galley docked at White Harbor's river gate. Grain barrels thudded onto piers. Bundles of seasoned pine followed, then casks of southern wine for wary northerners to sample. Gendry strode down the gangplank in salt-stained leathers, hair whipped dark against his brow, and knelt before her. "Food for your villages," he declared, voice carrying across the harbor. "Timber to rebuild halls burned by the dead, and coin enough to seed trade for next winter." Sansa motioned him up. "You sail swift, Lord Baratheon. The winds race when they taste revolution." He grinned, teeth flashing white despite exhaustion. "Shall we show your lords?" They convened in Winterfell's great hall at dusk. The hearth roared, shadows leaping across banners of grey direwolves, and crowned stags hung side by side. Not a single harp played. Sansa wanted no distractions. She rose, fur cloak draped over pale lilac silk, and addressed the assembly. "Years we bled for a realm that forgot the north saves the south when snows fall. Now, another storm rises. Poverty, disease, corruption. We cannot face it alone." She gestured to Gendry, who stepped forward bearing a long chest. He opened it. Inside lay bars of smoky gray steel glinting with an unfamiliar sheen. "Baratheon forged steel," he announced. "Folded with northern iron ore shipped to Storm's End at cost, tempered with dragon glass shards gifted by Princess Shireen before her death. Stronger than castle-forged steel, lighter by half." He lifted a sword. Its edge caught the firelight in ghostly ripples. He swung it, and the blade hummed like wind through pines. Lords leaned forward, envy and fascination mixing in their eyes. "With your queen's leave," Gendry said, "every holdfast loyal to this alliance will receive shipments of such steel, along with grain and lumber." He nodded to sailors who lugged smaller chests forward. Sacks of river grain, wooden carvings showing new plow designs, scrolls of trade charters promising shared tariffs along the narrow sea. Murmurs filled the hall. Lord Dustin whispered with Lady Barbary Risewell. House Glover's men thumbed the steel tests. Lord Manderley, cheeks flushed, declared, "If this is the future you herald, Lord Baratheon, White Harbor sails with you." Others soon echoed. Yet a voice rang from the back, Lord Burleigh of House Flint, scarred by whites and grief. "Words are wind," he barked. "What stops Southern lords turning lion and sinking their own claws into our coffers once you sail home?" Gendry braced elbows on the chest, gaze steady. "Because I will not sail home. Storm's End's heir can rule from Winterfell's walls as surely as any Stark from our cliffs. Marriage binds deeper than parchments." His gaze shifted to Sansa, question lingering unspoken yet clear. The hall hushed. Even the fire seemed to lean in. Sansa's pulse thundered in her ears, but her voice emerged calm. "The North fought for freedom. I will not trade one chain for another. Yet if the chain is woven from trust, and each link hammered by shared purpose, then perhaps it is not a chain." She stepped to Gendry's side. "Lord Baratheon, I accept your proposal. To unite by marriage, to forge an empire of snow and storm. But know this, in my realm, men and women hold fast to their promises, or answer to me." Gendry knelt again, unsheathing the Baratheon steel blade. "Then before these lords and the old gods, I swear fealty to Queen Sansa Stark, first of her name, and pledge Storm's End strength to the Northern Empire." Blood pounded through Sansa's temples as she raised him. She realized the old gods did indeed bear witness. The weirwood's face carved onto the pillar near the hearth looked satisfied, its mouth curved in what might have been a knowing smile. Winter's grip slackened as bells rang for a wedding unprecedented in northern chronicles. Flowering branches were scarce, but young girls wove garlands from frozen winter roses and pale blue irises imported at great cost from Gulltown. The ceremony took place in the godswood, purple dusk tinting the snow as Sansa draped a silver-embroidered cloak over Gendry's shoulders, direwolf clasp interlocking with stag clasp. When they joined hands beneath the weirwood, the heart tree's red eyes seemed to flare brighter, sap tears glowing in twilight. The lords cheered, wildlings howled. Even Arya, ghost quiet at the edge of the clearing, allowed a faint smile to touch her lips. That night, as revelry raged, Sansa slipped away to the rampart, overlooking the silent courtyard. Gendry found her there. For a moment they did not speak. Words felt small beside the weight of what they had done. Snowflakes caught in his lashes. She brushed them away, marveling that a blacksmith's rough palms could cradle such gentleness against her cheek. "Do you believe the gods approve?" he murmured. She angled her head. "The old gods care little for courts and crowns. They judge heart and honor." Her gaze turned south, beyond the dark tree line. "The judgment that worries me most is Bran's. He sees paths we miss." "Then?" "He will understand," Gendry said. "He knows alliances are breaths of living kingdoms." "Perhaps," she exhaled, forming wisps in the icy air. "But understanding does not mean sanction. The small council may brand us rebels. Let them." His voice deepened. "I have stood in fire-hot forges. I will stand in their scorn." She smiled at that stubborn fire. They would need it. "Still, we must proceed carefully. The Vale might align by blood. My kin in Arryn halls remain loyal. But the Riverlands are raw with grief. The Ironborn will not bend easily, and Dorne less so. Betty. Then we temper each blade differently." He entwined their fingers. "And when we meet resistance, we prove our empire feeds rather than drains." She leaned into him, comforted by the steady thump of his heart, like the forge's anvil, a promise of endurance. The first campaign was not of swords, but of seeds. Spring thaw revealed fields salted by wildfire and trampled by armies. Sansa dispatched Manderly ships loaded with Stormlander grain and new coastal plows to harbors along the Trident. Small folk, gaunt from too many missed harvests, watched Northerners unload sacks branded with direwolf and stag side by side. The imagery spread faster than riders. The Northern Empire does not demand tribute. It breaks bread. At River Run, Lord Edmure, released from Lannister dungeons but stripped of titles, greeted the wolves and stags with weary gratitude. He sat across from Sansa and Gendry in the half-ruined great hall where Tully trout banners hung tattered. Candlelight flickered as Sansa petitioned, "Join us. The Riverlands' rivers flow northward. Let their commerce do the same. We will rebuild your levees, dredge your quays, protect convoys." "Dander." Edmure hesitated, memory of past alliances sour in his drawn face. Yet, as he toured new irrigation pumps, built by Stormlander smiths, and watched Castle Black engineers raise flood walls along the Tumblestone, hope returned to his eyes. He swore fealty beneath a willow by the river, water lapping at boots as if sealing the oath. Word reached Vale lords soon after. Jan Royce, austere in bronze, rode to Winterfell under a banner depicting a mountain split by a direwolf's paw. "We will not kneel," he said bluntly. "But the Vale stands with Lady Arryn's kin." He extended sealed scrolls, grain tithes, iron ore, falcon fletchers to serve in northern garrisons. In exchange, Sansa promised roads reopened through the Bloody Gate, allowing Vale merchants north of the Neck without Lannister tariffs. Within half a year, a corridor stretched from the wall to the Stormlands. Caravans escorted by joint patrols, wearing cloaks of smoke gray trimmed in storm blue. Minstrels dubbed it the spine of the wolf stag. Sansa convened monthly moots at Moat Cailin, where mayors and millers sat beside lords to vote on tolls and winter stockpiles. Against tradition, she gave her people voice. Not everyone praised her. King's Landing's courtiers whispered that Sansa's empire reeked of northern frost and blacksmith's sweat. Queen Nymeria of Dorne, newly crowned after her mother's fall, sent a curt raven demanding the empire respect Dorne's sovereignty or face fire scorpions along the Boneway. In Lannisport, Ser Tyrion Lannister, Hand of the King, penned letters urging negotiation before trade fractures splintered the realm again. Sansa read Tyrion's wise counsel with fondness, but she knew King Bran's prognosis better than any. The realm must change or crumble. Change invited conflict. That winter's close, 3 Ironborn longships raided Deepwood Motte, torching storage barns and seizing grain meant for Bear Island. Lady Alysanne Mormont rallied defenders, but losses were heavy. Sansa convened her war council under Winterfell's vaulted ceiling, strategy maps unfurled. Gendry stood beside her in jack chain over storm blue gambeson, hammer slung across his back, emblem of lord and craftsman both. "We cannot allow reavers to threaten supply lines," Sansa stated, voice clipped frost. "But we also cannot bleed men on endless island skirmishes." Gendry pointed to the sea lanes. "We strike once, hit Pike's harbors at dawn, burn their new ships where they berth. Then we withdraw, leaving a single longship crewed by Ironborn who fought the Night King beside us. They bear a charter offering grain in exchange for peace and docking rights. Show them we can destroy or enrich." "Danim?" Tormund grinned. "I like smashing before talking." Arya, silent at Sansa's shoulder, murmured, "Sometimes you need a whisper as sharp as a scream." She volunteered to infiltrate Pike days before the assault, sowing rumors of a demon wolf hunting any who touches northern grain. When the fleet struck, Gendry's storm galleys hurled barrels of wildfire forged in repurposed storms and furnaces, cloaked under new swivel-mounted scorpions devised by Riverlander engineers. Dockyards erupted green, towers cracked, yet casualties were minimal. Sansa's orders forbade wanton slaughter. Within hours, Iron Captain Harlan Volmark signed the grain charter amid smoke and seawater, his beard still sparking with embers. The lesson traveled faster than ravens. The Northern Empire wielded mercy and wrath in equal measure. In the second year of the Wolf-Stag Alliance, Sansa and Gendry journeyed to Storm's End for the first grand moot of combined lords. They rode along the King's Road escorted by knights in mismatched armor, wolf sigils on borrowed Baratheon shields, Arryn falcons perched atop Karstark sunbursts. Where once banners clashed in civil war, now they mingled like patchwork destined to form new heraldry. Storm's End loomed, its pale stone ringed by crashing surf. Inside the echoing hall, lords from distant snow vales and river deltas dined at a single round table, carved by Gendry's own hand. The tabletop depicted a direwolf wrapped in a storm of spiraling antlers, their curves entwined so neither could be seen as devouring the other. Direwolf eyes inlaid with garnet stared across polished oak at stag antlers, studded with jet. Sansa opened the moot by recounting yields. Riverlander grain up 27%. Northern lumber exports doubling. Smith Guild apprenticeships tripled. She detailed the forging of new silver coin bearing both her profile and a stag rampant, minted in White Harbor and accepted across Alliance ports without dispute. She spoke of thousands of small folk resettled in villages fortified by Baratheon carpentry, of ravens carrying medical wisdom from Grand Maester Samwell Tarly, and of orphan girls learning letters in Storm's End's newly founded Frostros Academy, named for matching her house symbol to the Baratheon Rose of Storms. When she finished, silence stretched. Then Lord Wyman heaved his bulk upright and declared, "Never in living memory has so much been rebuilt in so short a span, and never by so many working as near equals." His booming voice filled the hall. "Queen Sansa, King Consort Gendry, House Manderly pledges its banners, bays, and bones to the empire you forge." One by one lords rose, pledging grain, mines, fleets. Even Lady Nymeria's envoy presented a Dornish spear polished to mirror sheen, a symbol of tentative cooperation, if not allegiance. The table held. That night, Sansa stood atop Storm's End's wind-lashed parapets, cloak whipping like a banner. Waves shattered against cliffs below, spray catching starlight. Gendry approached, scent of forge ash clinging to him even after bathing. He offered a flask. She sipped, dark beer brewed from northern oats and Stormland barley. Tastes of both homes. "We did it," he said, disbelief softening his grin. "We began it," she corrected, though pride warmed her like the stout's burn. "An empire's true test is endurance." He traced her gloved fingers, calloused thumbs gentle. "I once thought forging swords felt like shaping destiny." Heat. Hammer quench. But this, he gestured to the dark horizon alive with torch specks of anchored allied ships. "This is art grander than any blade." She laughed quietly. "High praise from a smith." He turned serious. "You are the smith now, Sansa." "And you?" she asked. "Your anvil, your fire, whatever you need." He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, and she realized she had not felt fear of touch in months. Not since the wedding night when he asked permission to unlace her gown, trembling more than she. She placed her hand on his chest, feeling heartbeats steady as hammer strokes. "Then we shall keep striking until the realm sings." Below, waves thundered approval. Challenges kept coming. Lord Bracken staged a rebellion, claiming the Wolfstag coin devalued his silver mines. Sansa dispatched envoys, but when negotiations stalled, Gendry rode with 300 armored smith knights, men trained equally in war and craftsmanship. They sieged Bracken's keep with trebuchets launching barrels filled not with fire but rotting fish from White Harbor. The stench broke defenders long before walls. Bracken yielded, signing charters reducing his coinage tax in exchange for reparations to villages he had overtaxed. In King's Landing, rumors spread that Gendry would challenge Bran for the Iron Throne next. Tyrion wrote bluntly, "The winds speak of empire. Careful they do not become gales that topple the Red Keep's fragile peace." Sansa penned in return, "Empires of cooperation need not topple kings." Should the small council fear shared prosperity? She sent copies of trade yields, inviting the Iron Throne to adopt similar models. Tyrion, ever pragmatic, began drafting reforms echoing Northern Guild charters, though he warned her of conservative backlash. Backlash arrived in the form of Euron Greyjoy's bastard son, Crow's Islet, a marauder who rallied dissident Ironborn with promises to reclaim salt tithes stolen by wolves and stags. He amassed 20 warships, swift and lean, striking along the neck. Sansa convened her war council again. Gendry suggested converting abandoned knights' watchtowers into signal beacons, each fueled by barrels of storm oil that burned blue, visible for leagues. Arya quietly volunteered to hunt Islet in his own hall. Tormund offered wildling longbow companies. Plans unfolded like clockwork. When Islet struck at Seaguard, beacons across the coast flared, warning fleets rerouted to intercept. Meanwhile, Arya slit the marauder's throat in his captain's berth, leaving his crew leaderless. The battle ended before sunrise. Victories accumulated, but so did responsibility. Refugees from the Reach pleaded for inclusion, their farms overgrown with thorn among shattered Tyrell glasshouses. Sansa feared overextension, yet she could not abandon innocence. She established border protectorates, where local councils managed day-to-day, but paid volunteer levies to the Northern Command, in exchange for food shipments. Some whispered empire creep. She preferred to call it stewardship. Amid expansions, her marriage deepened. Nights in the solar found them poring over ledgers by candlelight, heads bent close, sometimes arguing over corn tariffs, sometimes laughing at crude sketches Gendry drew of maesters gawking at new water wheels. He taught her metalwork metaphors. She taught him courtly nuance, demonstrating how a single raised brow could silence a quarrel. He forged for her a circlet of winter rose petals, fashioned from snow steel, each petal sharper than a dagger yet gleaming pure. She wore it during audiences, a crown of beauty and threat intertwined. 3 winters after their vows, Sansa birthed a daughter with hair dark as midnight and eyes pale gray as dawn. They named her Lyanna Baratheon Stark, unifying histories once sundered by Robert's rebellion. The North rejoiced. Wildlings danced. Baratheon smiths crafted a tiny hammer etched with direwolf pups. When Sansa presented the infant beneath the weirwood, she whispered promises of a realm where girls commanded halls and hearths equally, where the mistakes of fathers would not shackle daughters. Gendry stood behind her, arms protective around mother and child. The face in the tree seemed to smile again, as if the gods acknowledged the forging was nearly complete. But empires have enemies born not only from fear, but from envy. In Old Town, austere archmaesters decried northern guilds, circumventing their licenses. In Casterly Rock, Girion Lannister, returned from Essos with sell-sale fortunes, financed raiders against Wolfstag caravans. And across the narrow sea, exiled Golden Company captains plotted return, whispering that stags and wolves distracted Westeros, leaving King's Landing ripe for fresh conquest. Sansa called her council. The Empire, she declared, must stand ready not just to defend but to evolve. She ordered the construction of a fleet at White Harbor, hulls sheathed in Baratheon storm steel, sails dyed deep wolf gray streaked with gold lightning. She commissioned maesters to teach ravenry to orphan boys and girls, ensuring no corner lacked swift communication. She opened Storm's End's courtyard to Far Eastern alchemists seeking patronage. In exchange, they shared secrets for drought-resistant barley destined for frost-bitten fields. On Midsummer's Eve, she and Gendry toured the forge works at Gulltown, where Manderley engineers unveiled the first steam-driven winch lifting granite blocks for new causeways. Gendry's eyes lit with childlike wonder, seeing how coal heat turned water into power. He grasped a lever, guiding massive stones into place, while stonemasons cheered. Sansa watched, pride swelling, not only in him, but in the tapestry of cultures weaving progress across their empire. As sunset painted the sky, blood orange fading to violet, she realized the North's chill no longer dwelled in her bones. She had become storm and snow, hammer and hearth, cunning learned in silk-gilded cages, now free to shape towering ramparts. Gendry joined her on the scaffold. "Still forging," he said, voice warm as forge coals. "Always," she answered, "until even the Iron Bank cannot tally our achievements." He slipped an arm around her waist. "And when that day comes, we'll begin again." She replied, smiling, "An empire that stops evolving is a crown rusting in a barrow." Below, workers lit torches, their flames reflecting off granite and steel. Voices rose in songs blending northern lament and Stormlander shanty. The harmony of rites once considered disparate. Sansa closed her eyes listening. Each note was another hammer blow to doubt, another spark annealing her empire's foundation. When she opened them, she looked east beyond moonlit waves, imagining golden sails massing in Essos, Lannister coins clinking in dim halls. Challenge awaited, but challenge was merely ore unrefined. With winter hardening her resolve and storm forging her will, Sansa Stark would temper every threat, shaping a northern empire whose legacy no time could dull. And somewhere deep within Winterfell's godswood, the weirwood watched, red leaves rustling like applause. The heart tree had witnessed countless winters, countless oaths. But this vow, a queen and a blacksmith forging realms on anvil of adversity, felt unlike any before. The old gods, inscrutable and eternal, seemed content to let this empire of wolf and stag test the measure of seasons and stand, unbowed, upon the bones of the old world, daring spring to bloom anew. A.K. N.G. Night lingered longer than day along the spine of the wolf stag, as the fourth winter of the empire's reign fell, and with it came rumors borne on icy winds, banners of red hands unfurling along the Stormbreaker coast, ships with lion prows slipping north under cloud-black nights, and quiet mutiny whispered in infirmaries of awed town where potions turned to poison at the hands of nameless nup. Sansa felt the tension in the very marrow of Winterfell's stone. The castle, reborn and strengthened, still hummed with uneasy life. New gears creaked in hidden passages, spinning chains that hauled water from deep wells, and forges glowed where once storerooms lay empty. Yet beyond the walls, an empire still forging trembled on the edge of fresh catastrophe. Lyanna Baratheon, Stark toddled the length of the audience chamber, following Grey Wind's last surviving pup, a shaggy beast half-grown and already towering over her tiny frame. Gendry knelt at the girl's side, teaching her to balance a wooden hammer no bigger than her forearm. Sansa watched from the high seat, pride mingling with dread. Nothing sharpened a ruler's mind like the sight of a child who would inherit all she built, or all she failed to protect. Maester Jonell, quill trembling between thin fingers, read the first Raven's message aloud. Reports confirm. Girion Lannister's private fleet lays anchor at Fair Isle. Estimates place 20 ships outfitted for siege. Dockworks at Casterly Rock fashion trebuchets, designed to hurl wildfire urns. The maester's eyes flicked upward. Their target, by all accounts, is Sea Dragon Point. Gateway to our western trade. Gendry set Lyanna gently on her feet. Then we sail before they do. He rose, hammer pendant clinking against breastplate. I'll gather Storm's End longships at White Harbor. We flank Fair Isle, torch their siege crafts before they clear the channel. Sansa lifted a hand. Gyrion's no fool. He'll have cell sails prowling the bight to hamper any counterforce, and Lannisport's coffers run deep. Bribery can rot even loyal crews. We cannot spread thin chasing every decoy. She turned to Jonel. Any word from Archmaester Marwyn? Only silence, the maester answered. Voice hushed. The citadel walls grow thick with fear. They speak of your steam engines as heresy to nature's order. Cite the tyranny of unnatural progress. Unnatural, Sansa repeated, tasting the word like sour wine. Tyranny was what she had fled all her life. Tears of frustration threatened, but she blinked them away. Fetch the council. Arya Samwell, Lord Royce, Lady Mormont, Manderley Tormund. We meet by moonrise. She dismissed the maester and crossed to her daughter. Lyanna gripped her tiny hammer with both fists and swung at a wooden wolf target. The strike thudded true. Gendry grinned wide. Sansa knelt behind the girl. Remember, she whispered, guiding the child's arms. A strong swing is nothing without direction. The pup barked, tail whipping snow dust across the rug. Lyanna shrieked with glee. Sansa kissed the top of her head, inhaling the faint scent of pine from the child's fur-lined hood. For Lyanna's future, she would face lions, maesters, or specters of the past. The Empire must hold. Under the watch of cold lanterns and colder constellations, the small council clustered in the newly built strategy tower, a chamber of iron struts and glass panes that glinted like dragon scales. Maps lay spread across a wheel table. Plaster figurines denoted fleets, castles, food caches. Arya leaned against a window ledge, silent shadow. Samwell adjusted spectacles that always slid down his nose. Tormund sprawled with boots on a bench, gnawing smoked venison, red beard matted with grease. Sansa addressed them. 3 threats tighten around us. First, the Lannister strike. Second, the Citadel's shadow war, potions turning to plague, apprentices bribed to sabotage grain stores. Third, intelligence from Essos that remnants of the Golden Company court both factions, bidding themselves to whichever can promise the greater spoils. Samwell cleared his throat. A swarm of dangers, but each head shares a spine. They fear change. Fear a realm where knowledge flows free past Old Town walls, where coin shifts east and west outside Casterly accounts. Tormund belched. Then break the spine. Smash it, burn it, piss on the ashes. Benderwan. It's not so simple. Arya's voice, soft as snow, cut through the chamber. A blade in the dark might end Girion or the Archmaester who seeds rebellion. But kill a man and you birth a martyr. We need a strike that severs their means, not just their heads. Gendry planted his palm on the northern coast figurine. What if we make the sea our anvil? Let the lions commit to Fair Isle, then collapse the passage behind them. Lure them inside a coffin of their own making. Sansa's brow creased. Blockade the western mouth? With steel and storm. He outlined curves on the parchment. A narrow inlet the Lannisters must cross. We embed scuttled hulks filled with stone under shallow waters at dusk. Storm's End ships fine retreat south. Draw the Lannisters forward. When tide lowers, their heavier trebuchet barges run aground. A lightning strike from our scorpions finishes the rest. They'll have nowhere to turn. A risk, Royce mused, beard-brushing mail collar tie. Fair Isle's tide's unpredictable. If we misjudge, our own ships could founder. I trust Gendry's smiths to calibrate. Sansa touched the paper, envisioning the stakes. But while the lions choke on rocks, the maesters may unleash plague across riverland villages. Samwell, you'll lead Ravencraft. Craft messages disguised as Old Town directives. We turn their own network. Tell those novices the Citadel Council secretly approves our machines, that sabotage commands were forgeries by Gyrion's agents. Samwell's eyebrows soared. Forgeries? Your Grace, that borders on survival, Sansa interjected. Wars are fought with ink as often as iron. Samwell exhaled. Very well. I'll need seals stolen from the Citadel. Arya glided closer, pale eyes gleaming. I can fetch them. Tormund slapped his thigh. And I'll keep our friend Sam alive long enough to use them. He winked, earning a reluctant smile from the maester. Sansa folded her hands. Then there remains the Golden Company. Royce harumphed. Mercenaries bleed for coin alone. Exactly, Sansa said. Coin we have. More than lions suspect. But I refuse to pay them in gold. She reached beneath the table, withdrew a small chest, lid creaking open to reveal mottled lumps of dark blue glass. The raw azure dragon glass gleamed from caves beyond the shattered wall. What sellsword wouldn't trade coin for legend? Arm them with weapons that slew the dead. Promise them land in fertile northern valleys, where no lord yet claims domain. With terms, you serve 7 years. You train citizen militias. You relinquish claims thereafter. Samwell's eyes widened. Settling Sel's words could backfire. Arya shook her head. Or bind them, so their fortunes tether to ours. Royce nodded. Slowly convinced. Tormund laughed. Let the Southlings freeze their arses off. They'll be begging to serve by midwinter. Decision weighed like a greatsword balanced on Sansa's palm. She set jaw firm. Then, we proceed. Gendry, sail within 48 hours. Arya, steal those seals. Samwell, ready your quills. Royce, muster airy eagles for sky patrol. Lady Mormont will raise Bear Island's knuckle-axe fleet to guard our rear. Tormund, you and your free folk venture south. Sabotage Lannister lumber yards. Erode the lion's claws. They dispersed, parchment snapping, armor rattling, gears of a living empire beginning to spin. Gendry's fleet slipped through pre-dawn fog like specters. Bronze-tipped rams protruded from newly forged hulls, gleaming faint against moonset. Sansa stood atop Winterfell's western tower, cloak snapping in a gale scented of pine and brine. She tracked the glow of mast lanterns drifting seaward. Somewhere on the flagship, Gendry supervised riggers tying lines, and below deck, his smith knights sharpened storm steel blades. She pressed fingers to lips, whispering a prayer to gods old and new, though faith for her had long twisted into shape of iron resolution. She turned away before the last lantern faded. 3 nights later, news arrived on Falcon Wing. Soldiers disguised as pilgrims had infiltrated Old Town's medical halls, dropping vials into tincture barrels. Another slip carried word from Arya. Seals acquired. 1 novice slain after discovering me. Regret minimal. Sansa permitted herself a brief shiver. Arya's moral calculus had sharpened past sisterly familiarity. Yet in such times the realm survived on extremes. Samwell's forged decrees fluttered across Southron skies, instructing healers that their sabotage orders were indeed the Lannisters' ruse. Confusion sprouted in white-walled corridors. Apprentice and master debated doctrines under candlelit cloisters, their unity cracking. Tormund's raiders ignited warehouses along the Sunset Seacoast. Blue flames licked night horizons as wildfire stalks meant for Lannister trebuchets burned uncontrolled. Lannisport itself dimmed under shrouds of toxic smoke, its populace coughing curses at distant rulers who failed them. On the bite, Gendry executed his gambit. He ordered captured Ironborn thralls to sail decrepit hulks into the narrowest channel and deliberately scuttle them, holds packed with boulders. As predicted, tides receded faster than lions foresaw. Wall. Gyrion's war barges, heavier and slower to respond, plowed onto submerged stone reefs. By dawn, Baratheon galleys returned under cover of storm clouds, hurling scorpion bolts, tipped with dragonglass shards rigged to shatter into razor shrapnel. Sailsails panicked. Sails slashed, decks splintering. Flames erupted turquoise where leaking wildfire touched saltwater mist. Lion banners smoldered into ash, swirling above corpses. From Winterfell's Northwatch Tower, ravens delivered confirmation. Girion Lannister captured, Fair Isle fleet annihilated, casualties minimal to Empire. Sansa closed her eyes and exhaled. A victory etched in cold sea spray and cunning, not brute force. Yet triumph begged a price. 3 days later, a messenger arrived gaunt and trembling. "Your Grace," he rasped. The Archmaesters convened. They declared a ban on northern trainees, revoked Samwell Tarly's chain by proclamation. They name your innovations: steam winches, night lanterns, smoke steel, abominations. Samwell paled. They'll recall every maester serving your vassals. Strangle communications. Sansa's voice sliced the silence. Then we no longer bow to their monopoly. She turned to the council. We establish our own order, call it the Boreal College. We teach healing free of archaic superstition, share knowledge across our provinces. Old Town may wall itself in parchment. We will inscribe progress with iron stylus on living stone. Then the one. Royce frowned. Such schism invites open war. It's begun, Sansa replied. We choose our battleground. She penned edicts, summoning scholars from Braavos, Karth, the free cities, any willing to brave winter roads in exchange for patronage and sanctuary. She offered stipends to displaced Citadel apprentices. Within weeks, caravans bearing dusty tomes and starry-eyed healers converged on Winterfell. They found dormitories erected beyond the Godswood, towers warmed by cunning heat pipes that siphoned forge exhaust into tiled corridors. Samwell oversaw curriculum. Tormund jested the college smelled like burnt bread, but saved more lives than any helmet. News of the Boreal College's founding spread like wildfire unchained, but where wildfire destroyed, this blaze kindled hearts. Commoners hailed the promise of vaccines against winter fever, new mills easing toil. Even some maesters, chafing under Citadel conservatism, defected north under assumed names. One of them, a woman calling herself Maester Lysa, brought secret charts describing deep-water currents along the narrow sea, knowledge priceless for trade expansions. Meanwhile in Braavos, the Golden Company weighed Sansa's proposition: dragonglass, land rights, and a seat at the Boreal College for their healers. The Sellsword's commander, Miles Toyne the Younger, signed, pricking finger and sealing with blood. 500 battle-scarred veterans marched onto ships bound for White Harbor, leaving Esso's bankers fuming at unpaid debts. With Sellsword reinforcements came complexities. Assimilation of ruthless mercenaries into northern hamlets required oversight. Sansa dispersed them in mixed units, lance captains paired with knights watchbuilders restoring watchtowers. Each golden soldier swore new oaths to Lyanna's infant handprint pressed in wax, a symbol of future rather than coin. The cunning gesture disarmed some suspicion. Others stewed, but no open unrest emerged. Yet, darker clouds brewed. Far south, a fragment of the shattered Targaryen loyalists, led by Aegon Blackfire's last-born shade, synchronized with Old Town zealots to incite rebellion in the Reach. They seized Highgarden's vacant granaries, promising blooming fields if peasants rose against northern tyranny. They captured Lady Nymeria's envoys en route to treat with Sansa, executing them beneath apple trees as snow-born spies. The message dripped scarlet onto white blossoms. The growing season belongs to true Westerosi, not wolves and stags. Sansa's jaw steeled. Violence against diplomats demanded reply. She summoned her Storm Wolf Guard, an elite cadre merging stark agility with Baratheon raw strength. Gendry handpicked Smith Knights. Arya chose silent killers. Samwell outfitted them with crossbows, engineered to fire quarrels recoated in Frosterson, a resin freezing blood on impact. They rode south, cloaks rippling. On Reach borders, the Storm Wolf Guard secured hamlets one by one, distributing grain, rather than fear, but punishing ringleaders with swift trials broadcast by traveling minstrels. The peasants, starved by rebel hoarding, soon aided them. By harvest's end, The rebels found themselves ringed by their own villages, food supplies exhausted. Highgarden's once bountiful orchards lay wilted. Rebels had plucked fruit too early, leaving rot. Their moral claim collapsed like moldy petals. Gendry pushed for final siege. Sansa, aware of looming famine across kingdoms, proposed a daring alternative: transform Highgarden into the Empire's breadbasket rather than scorch it. She offered rebel foot soldiers full pardons and shares in upcoming harvest profits if they surrendered within 48 hours. Or face storms of Frostricen bolts. Desperation tipped scales. They surrendered en masse, handing over Blackfire's shade, who was no more dragon than candle cinder. Sansa did not grant him execution. Instead, he was dispatched, under guard, to the Boreal College where scholars debated nature versus nurture, a fanatic legacy, a living lesson. Some protested, but Sansa declared, "Death ends learning. Let him witness the world progress without him." Seasons wheeled. The Empire, once a fragile alliance, now spanned from Storm's End cliffs to Frostfang foothills, from the Vale's eagle-topped peaks to Reach's orchards reborn. White Harbor bustled with trade. Carthane's silk merchants haggled with Ironborn fishmongers. Golden Company veterans trained northern orphans in pike drills. Apprentices from Dorne studied snowcrop botany. Even Lannister merchants, humbled by naval defeat, petitioned for docking rights, bearing peace offerings of mirrored glass and precision lathes. Old Town remained obstinate. The Citadel's conclave excommunicated every defected maester, proclaimed the Boreal College a nest of witchcraft. But their edicts rang hollow across a realm witnessing plague cures and iron lung contraptions birthed from that very college. Whispers reported civil unrest within Citadel walls, young maesters chaining deserted halls and forging midnight alliances with Boreal envoys. Tyrion Lannister, silver hair now streaked with white, wrote Sansa a candid letter. "I once told you every chain is a tool as well as a shackle. You forge new chains. Use them wisely." She valued his counsel. She responded, inviting him north to lecture on governance at Boreal. He declined politely. King Bran remained his charge, but appended a postscript praising her refusal to crown herself empress. Humility, he wrote, was rarer than Valyrian steel. Humility tempered Sansa's ambitions, yet danger never fully vanished. One dawn, Lyanna, now 5, chased her pup across Winterfell's courtyard and stumbled upon a hidden trapdoor ajar. From its dark stairwell wafted the scent of oil, and overheard murmurings, foreign tongues planning sabotage of the keep's steamwork heart. Guards apprehended 2 conspirators clad in master robes sewn with golden threads. Interrogation revealed a Citadel splinter cell intent on blowing the boiler chambers, crippling the Empire's nerve center. The plot's failure shook Sansa. If zealots reached her daughter's playground, security sagged. She tightened patrols, embedded Stormwolf cadets among furnace crews, and ordered construction of mirrored tunnels, guiding heat away from central chambers, ensuring any explosion vented harmlessly. She met Gendry in the forge late that night, sparks painting his face in orange. Every step forward births another shadow, she confessed. He hammered molten steel, rhythmic clang soothing. A forge never sleeps. Rust creeps the moment flame dies. So we keep stoking. She sank onto a bench, exhaustion pooling. Are we fanning our own destruction by pushing boundaries none understand? He quenched the blade in oil, steam hissing. Robert Baratheon forged his claim on the realm with a hammer and rage. It lasted less than his temper. We temper every advance with care. That difference will outlast daggers in dark. He crossed to her, wiping soot from his brow, took her hand. When you doubt, remember the faces of those who eat tonight, because mills churn in the Reach, because grain flows north instead of rotting under Lannister tariffs. Doubt, but don't halt. She leaned into his chest, heartbeat echoing the steady thrum of machines below. Strength drawn, she returned to her tasks. Years ripened. Snow gave way to springs painted with bluebells carpeting fields where graves had once scarred the earth. Teenage boys who watched their fathers fall to whites, now apprenticed as aeronauts, overseeing hot air scouts' balloons, a boreal college marvel, drifting above trade routes to spot raiders miles away. Steam-powered wagons rattled along plank roads, hauling timber faster than horse caravans. Villages celebrated Wolf-Stag Feast Day each midsummer, commemorating Gendry's first grain convoy. They brewed ales named Direfoam and Storm Brew, toasting Queen and Smith King. Lyanna grew, blade swift mind inheriting Sansa's strategy and Gendry's tenacity. At 8, she recited shipping ledgers. At 10, she beat 2 Golden Company veterans in sparring using a wooden direwolf claw staff Samwell designed to teach physics of leverage. Rumor spread that the princess dreamed of a united research fleet, sailing far east across the Sunset Sea. Sansa encouraged her curiosity. An empire stagnates when heirs fear uncharted worlds. In Grand Hall's library, dusklight filtering through leaded glass, Sansa found Bran waiting in his carved weirwood wheelchair, ravens perched on rafters overhead. He seldom traveled north, preferring the far-seeing solitude of King's Landing's oldest towers. His sudden presence unsettled her. "Little sister," he greeted, voice distant, eyes milky yet piercing. "I have come to offer warning, not censure." She closed a tome. "If the conclave asked you?" It was not the Citadel. He tilted his head, as though listening to 1,000 whispers. "Your empire stands at a hinge of fate. Continue this path, and Westeros may blossom to rival the free cities. Yet threads converge, one in the east, one beneath your feet. Ignore either, and the tapestry unravels." "Nah," she inhaled. "Speak plainly." "A dragon stirs in Valyria." Bran's expression remained serene. "Not of blood, but of molten earth. A chain of eruptions will cloud summers for a decade. Dim harvests south of the neck. Your mills, your stores, will face strain. Prepare reservoirs, diversify seed grain. Breed Frostheart, barley in the stormlands." He paused. "And below Winterfell, fissures widen from the new steamworks. Pressure builds near the crypts. Reinforce or risk a collapse." Sansa absorbed the prophecy-tinged counsel. "Thank you." He turned his chair, wheels whispering. "Empire or kingdom, the realm depends on vigilant shepherds. You have done well. Continue, but remember, every forge needs quenching." With that cryptic benediction, he departed. Sansa wasted no hour. She convened architects, ordering seismic bracing under crypt corridors, channeling excess heat into greenhouses to expand winter crops. Across the Stormlands, she financed new labs breeding Bran's Frostheart barley, designed to germinate in low sun. Skeptics scoffed. She persisted. 2 summers later, the skyfall. Ash clouds from Valyrian fissures, dimmed horizons, reddened moons, chilled breezes. Yields in the Reach dipped 30%. Yet northern granaries brimmed with Frostheart harvests. Empire wagons rolled south, distributing seed and sustenance. Refugees from sun-struck Dorne trekked north, welcomed into agricultural colonies where Golden Company veterans drilled them in defense as they sowed new fields. Crisis became crucible, forging bonds stronger than edicts. Even some Citadel archmaesters, facing famine, grudgingly accepted boreal shipments. Sansa sent them with no surcharge. Compassion, she believed, could shame obstinacy better than swords. When a new conclave convened, they rescinded the ban against northern trainees, though they still branded steamworks experimental. Samwell chuckled, reading the decree, quill blotting. "A foot in the door beats a slammed portcullis." Winterfell thrummed, no longer a lone wolf's lair, but a heartbeat of a realm fused by storm's roar and winter's hush. On the 12th anniversary of the Wolf-Stag Alliance, lords, scholars, and free folk gathered under carven vaults of the old Godswood Hall, an add-on linking ancient trunk to new glasswork roof. Light poured through stained panels depicting a dire wolf and stag encircling a blooming heart tree, ringed by gears and waves. Sansa, clad in quilted steel blue gown, rose before the assembly. Lyanna, nearly 12, stood at her side, circlet of intertwined iron rose petals crowning dark curls. Gendry, shoulder broad, cheeks dotted with silver flecks of smelt burn scars, watched silently, pride and awe warring in his gaze. "My friends," Sansa addressed, "we gather not to mark a throne or triumph, but a testament that hardship joined by purpose breeds prosperity. 12 winters passed, we sowed seed in frozen soil. Today those seeds bear fruit enough to feed a continent. But harvests rot if hoarded. Beginning this day, the Northern Empire dissolves its tariffs on life-saving goods across all kingdoms. Grain, medicine, engineering manuals. We open the Boreal archives to any who will wield knowledge for peace." "And no." Gasps rang. Tyrion's representation, young Maester Podrick Payne, clapped. Archmaester Lysa blinked tears. Even a few Citadel delegates bowed heads. Sansa continued, "We do not claim dominion. We claim stewardship. When storms lower, we lend harbor. When winters rage, we share fire." She turned to Lyanna. "In years to come, my daughter will travel each province not to collect taxes, but to teach and to learn, accompanied by scholars of Boreal and warriors of all banners. She will witness your struggles firsthand, so no ruler may command blind." Lyanna bowed. Controlled, resolute. Cheers erupted. A roar of voices that once spoke different tongues and creeds now harmonizing. Gendry lifted Sansa's hand. She squeezed his calloused fingers, recalling a forge's heat the first time she saw him craft steel alive with orange light. Later, on the balcony overlooking lantern-lit courtyards, Sansa watched snow swirl among cherry petals, an experimental tree acclimated through Boreal grafting. Contradictions dancing together, thriving. Gendry joined her. "An emperor would have crowned herself today," he said softly. "An emperor forgets frostbite, feels the same no matter who wears a crown." She replied, "Besides, titles weigh heavy." She leaned against the rail. "I carry enough." He touched her shoulder. Never alone. His eyes traced lines of her face weathered by responsibility yet luminous. "Do you regret any of it?" She shook her head. Snow-dusting auburn hair. "Regret? No. I mourn the cost. Lives lost at Fair Isle. Novices executed by zealots, villages starved before aid reached. But regret means wishing away what shaped us. Without every hammer blow, the blade dulls." They stood quiet as bells tolled midnight. Somewhere in the valley a steam whistle answered, a deep hoot of a freight carriage rolling south with fresh grain for sun-faded fields. Clouded moonlight reflected in Sansa's eyes. She whispered almost to herself, "We keep forging." Gendry kissed her temple, lips warm against chill. "And quench when time comes." She smiled, thinking of Bran's warning. "One day, yes, we will pass the hammer to Lyanna, to her own council. The Empire will evolve, or fracture, by their choices. But that is what makes it strong. Still forging." Below, in torchlit avenues, free folk fiddlers paired with Dornish pipers, and reach farmers waltzed with Vale shepherds, under banners of wolf entwined with stag. Snowflakes melted on cheeks flushed by cider and camaraderie. The Empire beat onward, a living thing, humming with invention, tempered by compassion, honed by hardship. Not flawless, not eternal, but resilient. A blade tested in the fires of betrayal, rebellion, famine, and forged into something new. Sansa raised her gaze to the godswood, silhouette of the ancient heart tree, etched against star-dusted sky. Where once sap tears bled alone onto frozen earth, now lanterns ringed its trunk, illuminating carved face in warm glow. It seemed to watch her with calm approval, as though the old gods accepted that even iron and steam could serve their timeless design, that people bound by shared purpose could carve order from chaos, hope from ruin. She closed her eyes, breathing winter air laced with forge smoke, cherry blossom, distant sea salt, the mingled scents of a realm reborn, and in that quiet moment she understood. Empires fall, kingdoms fade, but legacies live in each life, lifted from despair. And so long as one hammer struck in kindness, one mind questioned in courage, the Northern Empire's spirit would never truly sleep. Sansa exhaled, opened her eyes, and stepped back into the glow of her people's future, ready to stoke the next fire. Mist clung to the spires of Winterfell like a living thing, coiling in pale strands through the arrow slits where torch glow flickered. In the eastern sky, a bruised dawn hesitated, light as thin as breath on glass, while the old god's wood waited silent and inscrutable. Sansa Stark rose from a night of restless visions, ashen dragons circling the Valyrian peninsula, molten rock raining onto empty fields, Lyanna's small hands pressed to cracked earth that bled fire instead of water, and she dressed before the servants came, insisting on the charcoal-quilted gambeson lined with fine male links no seamstress could see. Dreams were warnings, she had learned, whether born of prophecy or worry. Ignoring them invited calamity. When she crossed the yard, stray flakes drifted from the murk overhead, not of snow but of ash, so fine it settled gray upon the ramparts. The older ravens shook their wings in protest, croaking. From the forge quadrant drifted a clang more relentless than usual, echoing against stone in quick, urgent rhythm. Gendry was already at the anvil, shirt damp with exertion though dawn's chill frosted his beard. Sparks spat as he folded storm steel, each blow ringing like a distant alarm. "It's thicker this morning," he said without prelude, nodding to the flakes that melted into smears on his forearm. Carried the whole way from Valyria, the scholars reckon. Sansa touched a flake on her sleeve. It smeared beneath her thumb like soot. Samwell's ravens measured sunlight yesterday, 5 lengths shorter than midsummer should grant. Crops yet unharvested in the reach will stunt. Gendry quenched the half-shaped blade, steam ghosting upward. "We have winter barley enough, and the frost heart strains. But south of the Trident they'll choke if the sky stays bruised. We should begin convoys now, before the roads turn to bog." "We will." She met his gaze, saw the same tension thrumming behind his calm. "But food alone will not mend lands if ashfall worsens. We must think larger." He wiped sweat with a leather cuff. "There's talk among the boreal artificers, constructing mirrors to angle what sun we have into orchards. I'll put coin behind it." "Do so," Sansa said, then added in a lower voice, "Lyanna is to meet me in the observatory tower at first light. She asked to show me something. She was pacing our solar half the night with parchment rolls." Gendry replied, pride softening his brow. "Let her chase the storm. The world will be hers to temper soon enough." Sansa squeezed his hand, then turned toward the tower where slate tiles shone damp under drifting ash. Wolves prowled the courtyard below, their furs silvered by dust. They watched her pass with eyes that knew the language of omen. Inside the stairwell, torch smoke curled in uneasy currents. She climbed to the topmost chamber, a glass-roofed dome glimmering faintly pink with dawn's muted glow. Lyanna stood on a footstool beside the celestial sphere, dark hair braided tight, a quill tucked behind one ear and smudges of ink staining both thumbs. At 11 she carried herself taller than many grown squires, her features a tempered mix of mother's clarity and father's unyielding line. Before her, the great table map of Westeros was unrolled and weighted by iron wolf and stag figurines. Over it she had placed translucent slates etched with crisscrossing lines, circles, runes older than Valyrian glyphs. "You're early," the girl said, not looking up. "Good. I think I can show you before the next bell." Sansa smiled despite fatigue. "Show me what?" "A pattern the maesters missed." Lyanna tapped the slate. "Ash clouds drift erratically because of high-sphere winds, yes? But the boreal astronomers measure their density each night by star occlusion. When I plot their sightings against the old Targaryen fireline records, those your library keeps from Aegon III's reign, there's a sequence." She moved a lamp beneath one slate. Shadows of markings aligned to reveal a spiral tracing from the smoking sea toward Westeros in widening arcs. Every eruption in Valyria that reached our skies over the last 1200 years followed this path, then ebbed when sea currents cooled the magma vents here. She indicated a point off Sithorios' northern tip. But the current fissure wavers. It may widen beyond the cool belt. Now, Sansa bent closer, mind racing. Meaning the ash clouds could thicken, linger, or split, Lyanna said, voice low, sending a second plume north-northwest toward the white waste. Ice mixing with ash can birth storms whose lightning turns stone to glass. The wildlings have myths about black blizzards. If that spiral touches the wall's breach, it could scour the neck clean. A chill, unlike any winter draft, threaded Sansa's spine. She studied the spiral's ghostly arc, curling toward the map's heart of the north. Has Samwell seen this? He will this morning. I wanted you first. Mother, we need to seal the breach again, and reinforce every watchtower from Eastwatch to the Shadow Tower. If a black blizzard rips south, nothing living outruns it. Sansa straightened. For a heartbeat she saw not her daughter but a commander wise beyond years, one who might soon bear the Empire's mantle. Pride warred with dread. Then we ride for the wall, she said. 8 once. By midday ravens winged from Winterfell to every great house. Summon masons, engineers, dikers, woodsmen. Within 48 hours a column of activity snaked north. Steam wagons laden with quarried stone, carts piled with resin-sealed timbers, barrels of lime mortar, mules dragging sledges of forged braces. At its head rode the Stormwolf Guard in slate-gray cloaks. Lyanna centered between Commander Hareth Tallstag and the wildling archer Scotty of the Pine Spears. Sansa and Gendry followed with a second contingent. Maesters, boreal scholars, and Samwell himself, cheeks reddened by brisk air and anxiety in equal measure. The closer they drew to the wall's broken segments, the thicker the ash drift grew. It gathered in drifts along the King's Road like phantom snow, caking hooves and wagon wheels, sapping color from the landscape. When at last the jagged gap appeared, icy cliffs sheared by the dragon Viserion years before, Sansa felt the scale of threat. The wound yawned 600 feet wide, its edges melting slowly beneath smears of dark soot, as though the wall bled. They established a base beneath the ruins of Castle Black, where rebuilt barracks now housed 100 rangers of the reforged Watch. The Lord Commander, a wiry woman named Hala Crow-Eye, greeted Sansa with tempered relief. We hold the line, Your Grace, but the wild is restless. Shadows move under the ash. Some say the others stir again. Sansa shook her head. The dead fell for good. But fear reanimates rumor faster than necromancy. Still, we will not gamble. Our aim is wind, not whites. Then she. Architects surveyed the breach, voices echoing against ancient ice, while Samwell unrolled Lyanna's charts, explaining to elders how black blizzards conduct lightning through ash-ice fusion, how a single strike could fracture the wall farther or ignite entire forests. The rangers listened, doubtful, until Lyanna herself stood atop a stone block and described the spiral path with clarity that silenced men twice her age. Gendry oversaw the forge kilns assembled at the base, portable furnaces belching blue flame where storm steel rods hissed, hammered into braces. He assigned smith knights to each scaffold crew, teaching them to rivet the iron deep into both ends of the icy gap, anchoring plates of obsidian-infused alloy designed to absorb lightning, dispersing it harmlessly through copper-grounding cables, hammered into bedrock. Night after night the black ash thickened. Lanterns glowed sepia behind curtains of dust. Still they worked. Northerners, Stormlanders, free folk, runaway Citadel apprentices, all chanting time to Gendry's hammer blows. Lyanna patrolled scaffolds, imperial cloak cinched around slender shoulders, scribbling wind readings, redirecting ballast bags on newly raised sky balloons tethered above the breach to measure currents none could see. On the 7th evening the sky cracked with distant thunder. A wall of darkness loomed northward, lightning flickering green within. Ash swirled in vortices, sucked toward the oncoming front. Sansa watched from the highest scaffold as mortarmen frantically sealed last seams. She turned to Lyanna. How long? Less than 2 hours, the girl answered. We need the final top brace lock. Gendry, farther up on the exposed rim, drove a pin through the last plate, then glanced down, fingers forming the signal. Done. Sansa signaled back. Retreat. Horns echoed. Workers scrambled. As the last lifted onto sledges, the storm struck with a howl like giants screaming. Ash and ice whirled together, pellets stinging skin like gravel. Lightning forked. White at first, then violet, slamming into the fresh storm steel plates. They shimmered, scattering sparks that danced harmlessly before grounding cables glowed red underfoot. The wall shook, powder fell in sheets. Yet the breach held. For 3 hours the tempest battered them. Timber creaked, tents ripped. Sansa stood beside Gendry inside the command pavilion, diagrams rattling on hooks while they listened to each boom, feeling the structure quiver. Lyanna paced, muttering wind speed figures, every so often darting out to adjust vein registers, cheeks caked in gray sludge. At last, silence dropped as sudden as the earlier roar. Dawn lightened the grit fog, revealing the patched wall still standing, scarred but solid. Cheers erupted, subdued by exhaustion yet laced with awe. Sansa let her shoulders sag, inhaled the acrid air, and whispered thanks to whatever gods oversaw such labors. But relief lasted a heartbeat. A rider galloped from the south perimeter, sigil of a green arrow on tan, House Smallwood's scout. He dismounted, face streaked with soot. Your Grace. Messenger birds dead along the road, throats blackened. Maester Ronald thinks the ash carries poison deeper south. And Highgarden has risen again. Not rebels this time, peasants, starving. Orchards failed early. They march on Old Town. 6,000 strong. Damn. Samwell blanched. Sansa closed her eyes. While they fought wind, famine ignited. She turned to Lyanna. Ready the convoy designs we prepared. Father, the mirror array prototypes. Half finished, Gendry replied. We can finish on the road. Sansa gripped the messenger's reins herself, mounted. Tell Halacroi to maintain watch and continue fortification. Send ravens to White Harbor for grain brigades. To Gendry she said, we ride with the first wagons. Lyanna stepped forward. Mother, I should stay. Study how the plates performed, refine the design for broader span. Dad you want me, and the Rangers trust me now. Let me command here. Done? The instinct to keep her child near warred with the knowledge that leadership cannot bloom in shadows. Sansa nodded once. Send full reports every daybreak. She pressed foreheads with her daughter. And guard yourself. Lyanna's eyes gleamed fierce. Always. But the journey south proved a descent through hunger. Villages once vibrant splayed empty. Doors ajar, cookpots cold, livestock butchered to bone. In some hamlets, they met grim brigands. Former tenants turned raiders, who scattered before the armored storm wolf vanguard. But not all violence was avoidable. In the burnt-out shell of Ivy Hall, a starving butcher attacked the menders unloading barley sacks, driven mad enough to bite through a guard's throat before Gendry's hammer ended his rampage. That night, the Smith King washed blood from his knuckles, eyes haunted. Food too late is still death, he said hoarsely. Sansa held his hands until his breathing slowed. They reached the approaches of Highgarden's outer farms under a haze that gave every vine a corpse-gray cast. The once lush rolling hills lay pockmarked with withered groves and shattered irrigation wheels. Desperate peasants, armed with pruning hooks and pitchforks, massed along the road, blocking passage. Their leader, a gaunt woman whose apron bore the sigil of House Caswell, stepped forward. Her cheeks were sunken, eyes bright with fever. Turn back, she warned. These wagons feed Old Town's tyrants first. We seize them for our children. Sansa dismounted, removed her gloves. These wagons feed all, she said. My charter strips tariff. Grain is free. The woman spat, black phlegm. Words from a northern throne. Old Town says your college hoards cures for coin. Samwell's face twisted. Lies spread by those fearing progress. Sansa raised a hand. Proof conquers rumor. She nodded to Hareth, who ordered tarps pulled. Wagons brimmed not only with barley but with sealed casks bearing the boreal crest. Inside, concentrated nutrient paste and vials of stomach-safe tonic brewed to counter ash lung. Sansa lifted a vial, drank before them all. "No coin asked." The crowd murmured. Children looked up with hollow eyes. The woman's grip on her pitchfork slackened. Sansa gestured, and Manderley sailors rolled barrels to the roadside, broke heads open. Steam rose fragrant with sweet malt. Starving folk hesitated. Sansa knelt by a skeletal boy and handed him a bowl. He slurped greedily. The pitchfork leader sank to knees, tears streaking soot. "How many died?" Sansa asked softly. "Too many to count," the woman whispered. Sansa laid a hand on her shoulder. "We will count them, and grieve them, and then rebuild. Help distribute. Tomorrow, you ride beside me." NMC. Willing hands unloaded grain through the night. Ash drift diminished within lantern light, as hope flickered anew. When dawn came, the convoy rolled again, now escorted by hundreds of former rebels who cleared roads, repaired bridges. Word spread on swift horses. "The wolf stag's grain comes free. Bring sacks, bring hope." Old Town's high tower rose above a harbor choked with fog and rumor. Archmaesters lined the battlements, stern, suspicious. They expected armies. They received a rolling kitchen at the gates, fires smoking with oats and lentils. Sansa demanded audience. After hours she was invited into the high tower's lantern hall, its walls lined with candles tall as warriors. The citadel's symbol of knowledge varied lights. Grand Archmaester Maribald, robes shimmering silver, regarded her coolly. "You arrive like a martyr, yet your northern innovations disrupt natural order. Storm steel plates? Mirror arrays to bend sunlight? Such hubris risks further disharmony. Already the sky darkens." Samwell bristled, but Sansa answered, "We adapt, as nature does. Stagnation is death. Your own apothecaries attempted sabotage rather than collaboration." Nemnemsal. Maribald's gaze flicked aside, guilt or irritation. "Desperation breeds error." "Then let us mend it with partnership," Sansa said. "Boreal will open its archives if the Citadel lifts its bans and shares advanced herbaries hidden since Maester Pylos." A murmur rustled the candle hall. Knowledge guarded for centuries dangled before them. Maribald leaned on his staff. "If we refuse?" Gendry stepped forward, voice calm but iron. "Then your people will starve while we feed them outside your walls. Bread is persuasive." Bah! Silence stretched. Sansa held the Archmaester's gaze. At length, he sighed. "Your father Ned Stark once embodied honor beyond politics. I see reflection." He struck his staff. "We accept terms." Candle flames trembled. History pivoted. Lyanna's daily reports arrived. Lightning dispersion at 91% efficiency. Further plating underway. Spirits high though ashfall persisted. But on the 15th day, a raven came stained with blood. Ink scrawled in haste. "Mother, Father, Airship Scout 7 crashed beyond the frost fangs. Sent a rescue team. Signals died. Something moves in the storm glow. Not dead ones, but light made flesh. Need counsel. Trust only this raven." Sansa's blood chilled. Light made flesh? Gendry read the note beside her, his jaw flexed. "I'm leaving tonight. Hammer or no, I won't let unknown shades stalk our daughter." "We leave together," Sansa said. She turned to Samwell. "Hold the accord in Old Town. Distribute cures. Gendry and I ride for the wall." Samwell protested, but one look silenced him. Preparations were swift. Fresh horses, elite storm wolves, glass arrows. As dusk bled into the ash-smothered sky, they galloped north, hearts hammering in unison. The journey blurred. Villages still cheering from grain deliveries. Banners waved, but dread drove them beyond pleasantries. At Mole's Town, ash lay ankle-deep. Children sketched suns on barn walls, seeking to remember gold. Wolves tracked alongside, their howls eerie. On the 6th night, flickers glowed beyond the horizon. pale luminescence dancing within the ash clouds, silent lightning that left no thunder. They reached the wall as false dawn waxed cold. The new plating reflected ghost glows. Lyanna awaited, face smeared with grease, eyes ringed by sleepless nights. She rushed into their arms only briefly before leading them to the western watch ledge. In the distance beyond the breach, 200 yards, lay the wreck of Scout 7, a torn balloon of tanned hides collapsed in a ravine. Around it drifted motes of light, orb-shaped, shifting amber to violet, each the size of a hound. They bobbed like corks, leaving wakes of shimmering ash. When rangers approached, the motes flickered bright, and the men collapsed screaming, flesh blistering as if sunburnt from the inside. Samwell's earlier words of myth returned to Sansa. Children of the forest once sang of star spawn drifting in white waste skies, remnants of celestial fire frozen in darkness beyond the dawn. Lyanna's chalk diagrams of spiral currents suddenly married cosmic wonder with mortal threat. "We tried arrows," Lyanna said quietly. "Wood burns mid-flight. Bolts of dragonglass shatter. Only storm steel plates deflect the rays for a moment." Gendry knelt, fiddling with a fallen ranger's scalded helm. The steel glowed faint where pitted. Heat, beyond forge fire. Light-born plasma. D. Damn. Nay. Sansa eyed the floating motes. Infinite patience. Alien intent. "Why do they hover near the crash?" "Power leaks," Lyanna answered. "Scout balloons carry glow oil and glass for night signals. The creatures feed on light, perhaps. When that supply drains, they may drift south seeking more." Sansa's mind raced. Lantern halls, hearth fires. Cities of light, ripe for harvest. "We must contain them here." Engineers gathered. A plan formed. Build a ring of mirrored shields around the ravine. Storm steel backs, polished obsidian faces slanted to redirect sunlight downward in a concentrated shaft, herding motes into a pit lined with black rock that absorbed heat. Within, quicklime and seawater would react, cooling the air, starving them of thermal sustenance until they fell dormant. Over 48 hours the ring rose, ash sleet stinging cheeks, raw. Gendry hammered frame joints side by side with wildling carpenters. Lyanna calculated angles, shouting corrections across wind gusts. Sansa coordinated ranger shielding runs, covering teams with interlocking plates whenever a mote darted near. On the third dawn the trap was ready. As first light seeped through ash haze, mirrored shields rotated. Shards of dawn converged into a single beam that pierced the ravine like a spear of day. The motes quivered, drawn. One by one they floated into the brightness, gliding along its path into the pit. Rangers triggered pulley lattices, dropping obsidian lids. A roar echoed. Steam or an otherworldly shriek. Then silence. Hours later, brave maesters opened a hatch. Inside, the motes lay dormant. Dim pulsations faint as ember glow beneath thick glass-like crust forming over water. Specimens for study, perhaps, or foes to forever seal below. Sansa watched workers weld plates shut, ensuring no fissure. Triumph pulsed, but she remained mindful. Each victory birthed unimagined consequences. Already scholars clamored to transport the Star White south for examination. She forbade it. Not until safety assured. The wall would guard more than the living dead. It would guard the unknown. That night she stood on the battlements beside Gendry and Lyanna. Northern lights shimmered faintly through thinning ash, green ribbons undulating. She spoke softly. "I once believed survival was enough. Then I dared empire. Now I see our charge extends further. To shepherd wonders, terrors, all." Gendry slipped an arm around her. "A forge crafts weapons or plowshares. The same flame, different purpose. We choose." Lyanna leaned on the parapet. "And keep choosing, each generation. That's the point, isn't it? To never let the fire die nor run wild." Sansa gazed across the dark frontier. Ash fell lighter tonight. Perhaps the fisher's fury cooled, perhaps not. But she felt the empire stronger after every test, fed by compassion, tempered by knowledge, shielded by unity of peoples, once sundered by kings and creeds. "We ride south tomorrow," she said. "Old Town awaits integration. Dorne sends envoys wishing mirror fields for their parched orchards. The Reach needs new seeds, and the Valerian ash still falls. We must craft skies if the skies will not gift us sun. Lyanna nodded, starshine reflecting in gray eyes. I'll remain here a while. The Watch can use my machines. Then, Sansa studied her daughter's resolute profile, saw the curve of the future. Send for me if the stars change shape. They always do, Lyanna said, smiling. Sansa breathed the chill, tasting soot and hope. She recalled Bran's admonition. Every forge needs quenching. Fires of crisis would subside, and when they did, she vowed to grant her people seasons of quiet cultivation. But for now, hammers must still ring. She descended the stone steps with Gendry, their hands entwined. Behind them the wall glimmered. A scar-turned armor, a monument to resilience. Above, the lights of the heavens rippled, distant embers of creation, watching this small corner where wolves and stags dared shape an age beneath a sky of shifting ash. And as Sansa crossed the yard, weary rangers saluted. Smith knights nodded. Free folk children chased glowing sparks from the forge into the dark, laughter rising. The Empire lived. Scarred, adapting, unbroken. Tomorrow they would face fresh tempests. Tonight, they rested under the half-veiled stars, warm in the knowledge that when storms gathered again, they would meet them with ingenuity, unity, and the relentless song of steel, forging a legacy no blizzard, no famine, no cosmic wonder could extinguish. Shall. The high summer of the ash skies came with an eerie quiet, as though the ragged clouds drifting across Westeros' dome had muffled even the heartbeat of the land. To the small folk, each dawn felt stolen. Light siphoned through a veil of soot, and the sun, when it deigned to appear, seemed a bleary red-rimmed eye forever on the edge of sleep. Yet in the halls of Old Town, where boreal scholars now kept uneasy company with archmaesters of the Citadel, the silence was anything but restful. Candles guttered at every hour, parchment crinkled beneath hastily scratched calculations, and murmurs of treason mingled with the rasp of quills as the Twin Orders wrestled with a project so vast even dragons would have balked. Sansa Stark stood on the Lantern Hall's highest balcony, cloak whipping against limestone as a salt wind climbed the tower. Far below, the Honeywine slogged black and sluggish through its estuary. Beyond, the ghost of the Reach's golden quilt lay dull and gray. She drew a slow breath, tasting brine laced with soot, then raised the looking-glass Lyanna had ground herself. Through polished lenses she tracked 3 wide-bellied cargo hulks churning upriver. Storm's End shipwrights had lengthened their keels to carry mirror panels as big as windmill sails. Decks groaned under the glimmering load. Sunlight, fragmented by passing cloud, winked against plated surfaces like trembling stars. Behind her, bootsteps tapped. Samwell. Slimmer these days from countless field rides, stopped at her side and folded his hands behind his back. They've passed the bar. Tonight they'll dock at the upstream quay. By dawn the panels reach the orchard belt. And the orchards will swallow them, Sansa replied, voice low. Steel frames half submerged in dust. The farmers need fruit, not silver sails. Then, they will bear fruit, if the angles are true. Samwell glanced at the parchments he clutched. The design disperses warmth over 20 acres each. 6 to a grove will return bloom next season. I have the horticultural proofs. You have numbers, she said, though her tone held no rebuke. Numbers don't soothe hunger while we wait. Samwell's shoulders sagged. We've done what can be done this fast. Riesh Bengal steel may arrive in 2 moons, enough to double production. He paused, hesitating. But another matter presses. Ravens from Sunspear report Dorne's eastern Pearl Coast, desiccating worse than ever. The water garden's cisterns are half empty, their sky well cracked. Prince Morek wants a demonstration of the Mirror Canal scheme before pledging gold. Now, a demonstration, Sansa echoed. They watch flowers wilt while they weigh coin. She lowered the glass. Schedule it. I'll ride south, Old Town can spare me once the mirrors stand. Samwell cleared his throat. There's also the Citadel Conclave next moon. They still expect your presence. Let them expect. Knowledge will not freeze if I miss one quorum. Sansa turned back to the river and its burden. Have we word from Lyanna? A hawk reached the rookery an hour ago. He offered a cylinder. She writes that the Starwhites remain safely entombed. The Watch observes no further anomalies. She is eager for deeper study, but honors your embargo. Sansa smiled, relief mixing with rueful pride. She tests patience like a steel file and me the brittle blade. She opened the message. A careful hand had sketched the wall's new buttress arrays, improvements scribbled in margins, carbon glass fusing, angled shock ribs, tracer lines to ground. She traced the ink with a thumb. Shall ask release soon. Shall need it, Samwell said. Great works outpace any single mind. Even hers. Sansa rolled the note. When the mirrors hum, I'll summon her south. A princess should witness what her theories wrought. Then, 3 weeks passed as if carried on the broad backs of those mirrors, each day hauling a heavier share of labor and doubt. Boreal carpenters erected skeleton frames in groves, once perfumed with apple blossom. Now only brittle branches rattled under the ash wind. Storm-forged hinges groaned while sections slid into place. Silver surfaces blooming outward like petals of an icy flower that could still catch the failing light. Engineers from Pento's fine-tuned angles. Reach Vintners tested soil pH. Even a few red priests wandered among the panels whispering of Arlor's fire harnessed by northern ice. Gendry toiled shoulder to shoulder with smith knights, welding support plates, and instructing apprentice farmers in maintenance. Soot smeared his jaw and hair until the gold-crowned stag on his breast looked a lone spark in a field of ash. When night fell, he joined Sansa in the repurposed manse that served as their command quarters. Fine high-tower marble stained with chalk diagrams. There they bent over ledgers long after candles guttered, plotting convoy schedules, feed ratios, trade levies, slashed so low even iron-born traders blinked in disbelief. On the 32nd night since the mirrors broke river horizon, first activation neared. The grove chosen was small, contained by low ridges that would hold warmth if the calculations proved sound. The Citadel's skeptics perched in observation towers, quills ready to record failure. Farmers huddled outside the ring, shawls drawn tight, wary of false hope. Sansa stood at the master lever with Gendry's gloved hand over hers. The sky, still ashen, allowed one slit of sun near the horizon, a dying ember of late afternoon. She nodded to Samwell, positioned by a polished copper heliograph half up a watch tree. He flashed a signal. Across the grove mirror petals rotated, silent as thought, until they aligned. The lever dropped with a click. A soft tremor rippled through support beams. Sunlight gathered, multiplied, flared. Lances of brightness cascaded through dusty air, pale at first, then gold, then fierce as forge heat, plunging into soil scored into concentric furrows. The earth steamed. Ash cracked, releasing damp loam fragrance that drew gasps. Buds half dead awakened, sap flowing in desperate rush. In minutes, beads of water condensed on leafless sticks. In an hour, those sticks unfurled, timid green, paler than any spring but alive. Children squealed. Farmers fell to knees. The archmaesters scribbling observations paused, quills hanging useless while they stared. A Reach grandmother in ragged lace pressed both gnarled hands to her mouth, tears rolling down cheeks striped with soot. Sansa felt her own breaths hitch, the sight of that fragile green stabbing deeper than any blade. She pressed against Gendry's side. It can work. He tightened his grip. It will. We'll cloak the groves in light until the sky heals. The demonstration rolled to a second grove, then a third. Each dawn and dusk mirrors rotated, pooling meager sun into lifelines. And by the 10th day, new shoots stood knee-high. News traveled swifter than ashfall. Kitchens baked first loaves of soft fruit bread, tiny but fragrant. Ciders fermented from early blossoms. Beekeepers reported hives stirring. Old Town's harbor rang with bells as Dorne's envoy ships weighed anchor. Marek himself arrived, crimson robes swirling, to pledge canals and sandstone aqueducts in exchange for mirror fields along the Greenblood. Sansa welcomed the prince at the Hightower's flagstone pier, where gulls wheeled like ghosts. He bowed with flourish, but his smile hid shadow. Over honey wine he confided Dorne's worry. Ghost caravan sighted in the deep desert, ash-cloaking sky so thick stars vanished at night, and caravan hands found glazed statues of scorpions fused to glassy sand. Valyrian emissions, the boreal geomancer said. Shifting jet streams to realms unseen before. Sansa promised help, mirror arrays to coax sparse springs, scholars to map subterranean aquifers, and Morek offered casks of bright water to irrigate the reach until orchards bloomed fully. In the conclave, archmaesters once hostile now argued over allocation of copper for additional heliograph towers. Grand Archmaester Maribald approached Sansa privately, a ledger of requisitions pressed to his chest. "The Citadel will mint a joint seal," he said, voice awed with wonder. "Knowledge unhoarded grows." Sansa answered with a thin smile, knowing not all hearts turned so easily. Some on the conclave sought to bend this new era to their own ascendancy. Ambitious lords calculated tariffs for sunlight. She warned them. The mirror fields would remain free under the Empire's charter. They assented, wordlessly scheming elsewhere. One such plot ripened on a moonless night, as Sansa rode the orchard perimeter. Shafts of silver moonlight barely pierced the cloud deck, but her wolf-bred senses caught sudden hush. A crossbow thrummed. She flinched as a quarrel sheared past, slicing her cloak stitch. 3 cloaked riders burst from hedgerow, blades flashing. Storm wolf guards answered, steel clanging, but Sansa wheeled her mount to intercept the attackers before they reached mirror struts. She felt with cold clarity that the mirrors were the true target. Damage them tonight, and morale would crumble. A rider swung a hooked blade toward the support cable. Sansa's sword met it, sparks spitting. The attacker hissed, female by the voice, then lunged again. Hoofbeats thundered as Gendry barreled across the rows, hammer raised. He clipped the second assassin with a shoulder blow that snapped collarbone. The rider fell, groaning. The third enemy aimed crossbow anew, but a storm wolf arrow pierced the weapon string, sending it twanging wild. Sansa disarmed her foe with riposte, then yanked the hood back. A young woman of House Peak glared, lips bloody. "Why sabotage life-giving light?" Sansa demanded, breath clouding. "Because light bows only to gods, not queens," the Peak woman spat. "You rewrite nature. The sky dims for your hubris." "Then or what?" "Hubris is leaving children to starve," Sansa replied. "Take her." Captured assassins confessed under Maester's powder. They served Iron Legion of Aralor zealots, convinced the ash dark was God's purging flame. Their plan? Blind the mirrors. Stoke despair. Rally masses to red priests promising deliverance by fire. Sansa ordered them imprisoned. No executions, for fear of martyrdom. She doubled mirror guard shifts and dispatched ravens to Dragonstone, where Melisandre's remaining followers debated doctrine. The Red Woman herself had disappeared years before, but her absence left schisms. Sansa offered them a bargain: publicly condemn sabotage and receive research on the light motes entombed at the wall. A celestial fire of their own, tamed for study. Some agreed, others withdrew into secrecy. The Empire's foes thus multiplied in shadow while its living gifts bred light. Within half a year of the First Grove's revival, 30 mirror fields spanned the reach. 10 more near Dorne's aqueduct skeletons, and smaller versions lined White Harbor docks, refracting long dusk rays into greenhouse domes. Grain maps once printed in gray now speckled with green. Taverns replaced ash-bitten despair with songs again. Not bright court ditties of old, but rhythmic hammer chants ringing of survival. It was then, amid cautious celebration, that another raven came from the wall, sealed with Lyanna's personal wax of intertwined wolf and stag. Sansa broke it by hearth's glow in Old Town's chart room. The letter inside was concise, yet its import slammed like war horn. Mother, father, unforeseen event. Starwhite containment stable, but unlidded ravine near Shivering Sea emitted new lights. Scouts captured one dormant shard. Flux readings match motes. Theory: larger core beneath ice, perhaps meteorite. Potential energy vast, but risk scale unknown. Request permission to assemble expedition for subsurface study. Await word. I will not proceed without sanction. Gendry read over Sansa's shoulder. He exhaled slowly. The Empire begins to heal, yet the North calls again. And my daughter stands at the gate of wonder, Sansa said. Or doom, he added, though not harshly. She has the caution of both our blood. But the world is unmade. New rules write themselves in real time. If we muzzle curiosity, fear rules. Sansa paced before the hearth. Flames danced orange, the color of ash skies before storm. Still, we must weigh benefit and danger. Samuel, summoned from archives, listened to the letter, then scratched chin stubble. A meteorite core. If of exotic metal, it could anchor the mirror rays, perhaps store sun heat for nights. It could also melt half the North if breached. Lyanna knows this, Sansa mused. Her request itself is proof of caution. She straightened, decision solidifying like quenched steel. We ride north, but we ride prepared. A joint team. Boreal geomancers, citadel seismologists, fire priests who truly revere flame's mystery. We analyze before any excavation. Gendry nodded. And smith knights to craft containment on site. Samuel swallowed. Old Town will protest losing scholars now, but knowledge waits for no committee. Let them protest. They will see when we return. Sansa called for her steward. Rouse the storm wolves. Draft charters, for volunteers. We depart at week's turn. Then so. The empire-wide caravan that embarked north was the most diverse assembly Westeros had seen since Aegon's conquest pageants. Northern outriders, storm knight smiths, reach orchard engineers, Braavosi lens makers, Lazarine healers skilled in treating ash lung, and a small cadre of red priests under Brother Duvaris, a sober scholar who viewed Raelor's flames as metaphor for renewal, rather than conquest. At their center rumbled experimental steam wagons powered by pelletized peat. Lyanna's own design, towing collapsible span bridges and resonant crystal arrays to measure subterranean energies. They passed through King's Landing, where the Iron Throne's advocates cheered them on. Tyrion's letters had spun the expedition as both bold and necessary. They crossed the neck, now fortified with hybrid walls of stone and living wood, whose roots drank residual ash. Crannogmen guided them around mire whirlpools, murmuring of strange lights under bog water. In Deepwood, Mott, they replenished with cod stewed in frost herbs. In Bear Island's sheltered harbor, they met Tormund and his Giantsbane freeholders, who hoisted crates of bear-hide furs for the ice winds. The closer they neared the shivering sea, the sharper the cold bit beneath the ash layer. Snow mixed with soot in gray flurries that stained every cloak. God. At last the wall loomed, plates gleaming dull silver in weak sun. Lyanna awaited atop the great gate, fur-lined mantle snapping around lean figure. When she descended the ice stairs, her smile cracked the wind's chill. She greeted each delegate by name, saving her parents for last. Embrace crushed hesitation. She had grown again, no longer a fledgling, but a young commander. In the war room carved from ice and insulated by storm steel baffles, she unrolled maps. Colored inks traced fault lines, seismic pulse readings, and the position of the newly discovered ravine east of Hardhome's ruins. The light pulses at regular intervals, she explained. 12 beats every hour, fading with daylight. It suggests a crystalline resonator reacting to solar flux even beneath ice. Nee. Brother Duvaris studied the wave graphs, brow knit. Such a heart of fire encased in frozen water. It echoes our scrolls from Ashai. Shadowbinders speak of slumbering stars that fell in elder days. Samuel swallowed, and brought Scourge with them. We will not awaken Scourge, Lyanna said with a calm firmness that reminded Sansa of her own steadiest tone. We will observe. We anchor seismic rods along a ring at 200 paces. We remove no ice until energy profile stabilizes. If levels spike, we reseal and retreat. Down. Sound protocol, murmured the Citadel seismologist, an old man named Arden Pike, who once dismissed Boreal as upstart. He now deferred to Lyanna with grudging respect earned by proven calculation. The expedition pressed on beyond Eastwatch, sledges creaking under weight of instruments. Nights glowed with shimmering curtains of pale green and violet. The aurora carved through ash haze more brightly here than anywhere south. Some took it for omen of blessing. Sansa took it as reminder of cosmic forces vast and indifferent. After 4 days, they reached the ravine, its entrance a jagged maw in a glacial rise. From its depths, a faint radiance pulsed, strobing white to amethyst at intervals. Air above shimmered, warping like heat haze, though the temperature numbed breath. They encircled the site with storm steel posts, linking cables into a grounded ring studded with dragonglass tiles. Gendry's insurance should energy lash. He and Lyanna directed installation while Sansa coordinated scouts to secure perimeter. Wildlings whispered of cannibal tribes still haunting Hardhome's outskirts. None appeared, yet the wind carried distant wails that could have been gulls or ghosts. Seismic rods lowered into boreholes hummed with energy. Arden's prisma charts leapt. Output exceeds anything recorded, he muttered, half terrified, half enthralled. This core, if tapped, could heat a province. Or shatter one, Lyanna reminded. For 2 days, they recorded data, charting pulse, frequency, radiation. Patterns emerged, every 10th cycle lengthened, as if the crystal heart inhaled deeper. Brother Duvaris stood prayerful vigil, reading the rhythm as breath of a star orphaned in ice. Mages from Korath mapped harmonic resonance, predicting fault stress to within yards. All agreed. The core remained stable, but should the ash cloud strangle sunlight any further, the heart might feed on its own energy, swelling until rupture. The debate over action soon split the camp. The Red Priests argued for constructing channels to vent the light upward. Release would celebrate the Lord of Flame and relieve pressure. Boreal geomancers countered that venting could melt ice shields, flooding coastlines. The Citadel seismologists favored capping the core with lead and obsidian, but Duvaris warned lead might poison the local water table. Around Sansa's command fire voices rose, sparks of temper mirroring the celestial pulses below. Sansa listened, weighed. Finally she stood. We stabilize without awakening. We encase the heart in a lattice of storm steel filaments. Your venting channels, but micro-bore to bleed excess into grounded plates. No toxic metal. We then layer reflective ice panels over the lattice. They will spread any residual heat outward under the glacier. Enough to slow melting, but not erupt. Nenderwen. Some scoffed. An engineering dream impossible in such cold. Gendry silenced them with schematic sketches, triangular trusses pre-forged in his white harbor shops, awaiting only assembly. Lyanna refined angles overnight. Within a week, Smith Knights and Carthene machinists had lowered the first filament cage. The pulsing light flickered less violently within its spiderweb embrace. On the 12th day they slid reflective ice sheets, cut by water saws, into place, sealing the ravine with a diamond-bright lid. The glacier accepted the patch like a pearl swallowed by giant clam. Glow diffused into gentle halo across snow. When the reading instrument steadied, relief rolled through the camp. Sansa allowed the first feast. Mammoth stew shared by free folk hunters, arbor wine from Reach halyards, bread baked with the very fruit of the first mirror groves. Around bonfires, engineers danced with spearmen, Bravosi sang strange sea hymns beneath ribbons of aurora. Sansa watched her daughter laugh with Red Priest and Maester alike, the future forging alliances she had only dared sketch. But the night hid trouble. On the feast's fringes, 3 red zealots, the same order that sent assassins south, had infiltrated disguised as laborers. Driven by dogma that flame must reign free, they crept toward the capped ravine with vials of combustible oil. A snow fox barked, startling a wildling child who glimpsed hooded shapes. She alerted Tormund's scouts. Sansa responded with a squad of storm wolves at a dead sprint. They arrived as the zealots struck flint. Gendry hurled his hammer. It smashed the vial mid-air, oil bursting harmless. Lyanna tackled another zealot, pinning him with techniques learned from Golden Company pike teachers. The third fled toward the glacier's rim. Sansa pursued, cloak streaming. She caught him at the precipice. He whirled, dagger glinting, mouth frothing prophecy. She parried, twisted his wrist. Blade clattered across ice. He spat curses, claiming her lore demanded the starfire ascend. Sansa's expression hardened. Your god might warm, but we keep children warm enough without burning the world. She bound his wrists, handed him to rangers. The attempted sabotage strengthened resolve. Guards doubled. Brother Duvaris publicly denounced extremist sects, pledging the Red Faith's resources to Empire stewardship. The capped heart remained stable. Lyanna's readings predicted longevity beyond a century. It would slowly release warmth through the grounded lattice, subtly heating winds that might offset Valyrian ash chill across northern seas. Gendry proposed tethering small turbines above vent shafts to generate electricity, concept newly nurtured at Boreal. Sansa filed the idea for future peace. With mission achieved, the expedition prepared to return. But before they broke camp, a final twist arrived, a raven from King's Landing bearing Tyrion's sigil. The message: Iron-banked dispatches fleet demanding collateral for debt owed by Crown, cites instability from ash famine. They threaten embargo. Your presence requested for negotiation, but be wary. Brevosi Magisters whisper of seizing mirror tech patents. Bring assurances, or Westeros, commerce freezes. Sansa sighed over the letter, feeling weariness behind her ribs. When one wound closes, another vein bleeds. Gendry squeezed her shoulder. We'll stanch that too, Lyanna asked. May I come? They need to see our generation also stands answerable. Soon, Sansa said, kissing her brow. Guard the wall. Finish research. We'll send for you when Braavos sees reason. They parted at Eastwatch Pier. Sansa, Gendry, and a delegation sailed south on ice cutter triremes, while Lyanna returned to Castle Black, command unanimous. As the ship slipped through slushy waves, Sansa scanned the horizon. Ash clouds thinning, faint blue bled into gray, promise of clearer skies. She let the breeze, cold but sweet, brush her face. Southward awaited bankers with talons as sharp as any ice monster, but she would meet them with the same alloy of compassion and steely will that turned famine to feast. The empire she and Gendry forged would bend, yet not break. If Braavos sought patents, she would trade knowledge for partnership, not subservience. If Ironbank demanded coin, she would offer bonds in mirror harvests, in stable skyways, in light itself. And should they scoff, she would remember the hammer's lesson. Some negotiations end at the anvil. Sails filled with frigid wind, snapping like battle flags. Behind, the wall glittered, a seam of silver stitched into the world's pale cloak, guarding a heart of starfire in restful sleep. Ahead, the future unfurled, a tapestry half-woven, threads of ashen gold, storm and snow, flame and green. Sansa Stark traced those threads with her mind, plotting how to weave them into a cloth wide enough to blanket every child from the shivering sea to the summer isles. For that, she would need more than mirrors, more than walls. She would need hearts emboldened, minds opened, fears quelled by fellowship. She would need, above all, the stubborn courage she once found as a captive girl dreaming of songs. That courage, tempered now by forge and frost, stirred warmly within. She stood by the prow, amber eyes narrowed against spray, and whispered to the waves. Onward then. We are still forging. Medicine now. Okay. No. Wave cloaks of frigid foam lapped against the hull of the ice cutter Resolute, as it angled southwest along the coast, her reinforced prow shattering thin floes that drifted like shards of broken moonlight. Sansa kept to the foredeck through most watches, cloak bellying in the wind, eyes fixed on the faint ribbon of blue that had begun to edge the once unyielding veil of ash. Each degree of latitude surrendered a fraction more color. Dusty pewter became pewter shot with aquamarine, aquamarine brightened toward steel, and at last, as the ship drew even with Gultan's headlands, a true sky blue glimmered in rents between clouds. It was no roaring victory, but it was enough to stir murmurs among the crew. The mirrors were working, some claimed, others that the gods had tested resolve and found it stalwart. Gendry joined her at dusk. Soot still shadowed the creases of his knuckles, proof of last-minute repairs to the deck cranes, but his eyes held a smith's certainty. He braced forearms on the rail beside her. Tyrion said Braavos amassed 20 warcogs outside the gullet, he noted. Coin gives them iron keels and scorpions, but not hearts to match. A gust whipped his black curls across his brow. You think they mean to intimidate or invade? Neither, Sansa answered. They will posture like sellsword captains till they weigh our ledger. Then they will ask interest. She traced a finger along the hum of the wooden rail, feeling where the grain had drunk tar to resist brine. We give them a share in the harvest bonds, ensure their coin returns thricefold. People who profit rarely pull triggers. Gendry's mouth curved. And if they want patents to the mirrors outright? Then we sell them old versions, she said. Sell them the idea that innovation never stops. The newest trick remains ours. She flicked a speck of ash from her glove. A forge trades secrets slowly, otherwise the anvil clatters empty in 5 years. Below decks, Samwell and the Citadel arithmeticians totted freight manifests. Rolls of contract vellum, ingots stamped with direwolf stag, vials of proof seed meant to germinate even in salt-scarred soils. Each was a bargaining chip. But Sansa also carried subtler currency. Testimonies from 100 reach farmers whose orchards glowed green under looking-glass dawns, a signed edict from Prince Marek promising southern aqueducts modeled after wall-venting shafts, and sealed parchments from the Boreal College confirming their intention to open a campus in Braavos, if terms were fair. Mines, she had learned, were gates that swung wider for scholars than for soldiers. 3 nights after they rounded Dragonstow's smoking cliffs, the Resolute hove into Blackwater Bay, under moonless dark. Lanterns from King's Landing flickered along rebuilt breakwaters, but beyond the narrows a second corona of lights glimmered. Torches on Braavosi masts, limbed like a festival fleet. Sansa counted. 20, yes, and more slender escorts skulking between, their oars muffled in leather wraps. She ordered sails furled and permitted the royal harbor master to tow Resolute to the stone dock. Tyrion awaited amid perfumed shadows of fig trees, now coaxed into pale fruit by experimental copper mirrors set upon the city walls. He bowed deeper than court custom. Vast alliances demanded visible respect. They convened at once in the council tower overlooking the river, whose waters glowed faintly with crescent reflections. A scaled model of the Braavosi fleet occupied the table's center, tiny flags marking hull classes. Tyrion, leaning on a dragonbone walking stick these days, tapped one of the toy cogs. They have keels of black iron and hull ribs cross-braced in the Valyrian style, he said, eyes bright beneath silvered hair. Yet they sit idle at anchor for over a fortnight. Do you know why? Sansa lifted a brow. Because every day our markets stay open. Braavosi quartermasters secure fresh wheat, dry fish, even copper from Lannisport for half what the Iron Bank predicted. Tyrion smiled, not pleasantly. Your mirror harvests collapse their leverage. A starving realm would have signed any bond. A fed realm negotiates. Samwell snorted delightedly. Gendry only folded arms. We feed ourselves. That's leverage enough. Sansa studied the model seas. Yet they still anchor. Meaning they hope we think ourselves richer than we are. She ran a finger north-south. We need to show them our ledger's true columns. Resource, yes, but also will. They will test it. Right on cue, a horn blared from the river. A Braavosi barge arriving under safe conduit pennant. It carried 3 envoys. Magister Sither Rogar, lean and cold, smiled. Bank factor Ulo Remus, pallid as parchment. And a third, unexpected, a Lysine engineer named Gennara Aromatis, rumored to advise the bank on patents. They ascended the tower stairs at dawn, cloaks heavy with red dye none but Lys could afford. Formal courtesies passed, wine unsipped. The negotiations began beneath tapestries depicting Aegon's conquest, irony heavy in each woven dragon. Rogar opened with impeccably polite threats. Default on King's Landing's, decades-old loans, seizure of Westerosi ships in Essosi harbors, embargo of copper vital to Storm's End forgeworks. Sansa listened, calm as still water, until he paused. She countered with a single scroll, the Harvest Bond Charter, detailing projected yields, tariffs, and public share offerings across the empire. Interest rates, minuscule but guaranteed. Dividends in perpetuity. She slid a beeswax tablet across the table. Sign here, and Braavos becomes first among stakeholders. Refuse and Pentoshi funds will fill the vacuum by dawn. She produced another sealed letter, Prince Morek's pledge of Dornish turquoise, in exchange for Pentoshi capital. Their ships sit ready. Rogar's nostrils pinched. Factor Rimus examined columns, murmuring. Jaenara Aromatis circled to the rear, assessing Gendry's rough-forged signet. Patents, she finally said, voice soft. Mirror synthesis technique, scattermesh calibration, even the peat pellet engines. We require exclusive rights for Essos markets. Sansa shook her head. Shared. Boreal retains research freedoms. You may manufacture under license. She tapped the charter's footnote. Tiered royalties scaled to your respective risk. She leaned forward. Braavos thrives on contract sanctity. Breach it with exclusivity, and you kill innovation before your investment matures. Rogar argued. Tyrion quoted Free City legal precedents. Samwell cited illumination patents from Volantis that failed when monopolized. Ours ground on like millstones. At last, Remus dabbed brow with lace. We convene our board, he conceded. Rogar hissed, but could not counter. The numbers were bloodless truths. The envoys departed amid thick tension. That night, Sansa walked the ramparts overlooking the tethered Braavosi cogs. Gendry joined her, pointing where moonlight struck oddly against several hulls. Armor plating, he muttered. They feared combat. He rested massive hands on stone. Will they sign? They will, if they believe the alternative worse, she replied. Tomorrow we show them the Ashlight market. At dawn she led envoys, and half the small council, along the street of looms to an industrial quarter previously crippled by ash. Here, Boreal engineers had suspended rows of pocket mirrors above every roof ridge. Ducts funneled condensed moisture into cisterns. Looms clattered again, weaving ash-gray wool into sky-blue bolts dyed with lichen revived under new glasshouses. The envoys watched workers, small folk, not slaves, earn coin enough to eat. Sansa unfolded metrics. Productivity up 50%, disease down, apprenticeship rosters full. This is one district. She said. By winter's end, 3 more will mirror it. We write such charters with or without your gold. With it, you profit too. Remis's eyes widened. Jaenara scribbled frantically, cross-checking potential margins. Only Rogar remained stony. Sansa eyed him. Fear finds no purchase here. Join progress, or watch rivals exceed you. She pivoted. If you require proof of good faith, speak to Storm's End Smith Guild. They're ready to take Braavosi apprentices. That night, the bank delegate returned alone. He signed. To placate Rogar, Sansa ceded a minor concession. Braavos would field 5 engineering surveyors at next season mirror expansions in Dorne. They sailed home less haughty, carrying crates of fruit wine previously impossible under ash skies. With the Braavosi threat diffused, King's Landing breathed easier. Markets rebounded. Tyrion toasted Sansa with arbor golder than himself. Yet, victory brought no rest. As Sansa prepared to ride north again, summoned to a summit on free folk representation, ravens arrived bearing dire news. A string of villages along the Sunset Sea, once roused from famine, lay silent. Witnesses reported winds cold as the wall's heart, and shapes moving under new sprouted orchards, roots blackened overnight. Star-white radiation? No. Lyanna's instrumentation showed stable flux. Something else corrupted growth. Sansa sensed foul cause. Those who saw the mirrors as blasphemy would not relent. She instructed Gendry to rally Smith Knights, then summoned Brother Duvarus and the Red Priests, who embraced cooperation. They would form an investigative cadre heading west. She herself would travel with a lean escort. Speed mattered. Before departure, Tyrion caught her in the Red Keep's rose garden. He handed her a miniature compass of Valyrian steel, inlaid with garnets. "Old trick from Essos," he said. "Steel points north. Gems wait whichever direction you truly yearn to go. When they align, trust your instinct." She turned it. The garnets hovered halfway between north and west. She smiled and pocketed it. The ride through the riverlands blurred in early autumn haze. Fields patchy but healing, small folk tipping caps. At Seaguard she turned northwest, hugging coast roads. Each village passed looked healthy until the first afflicted hamlet. Moss Hollow. Branches sagged under fruit, blackened as tar, oozing resin that smelled of brimstone. Sheep lay stiff, coated in frost, though sun stood high. A villager stumbled forth, skin marbled with dark veins, moaning of voices in the trees that promised warmth, then drained it away. Boreal healers attempted tonics, but the man died shuddering. Duvarus examined fruit under ember glow. "Shadow flame," he whispered. "Sorcery that feeds on life to fuel cold imitation of fire." Sansa's mind snapped to the red zealots. Relics of R'hllor worship twisting into hatred. She clenched gloved fists. "We thought them routed." They tracked the blight westward. Each night, ash wind moaned through dead orchards. At dusk of the fourth day they found the Zealot Cabal, a circle of scorched earth atop a cliff overlooking the sunset sea. There, 30 robed figures knelt around a brazier of black iron, chanting in High Valyrian, each phrase a ragged plea for apocalyptic cleansing. In the brazier rested a shard of star-white crystal stolen from the wall. It pulsed sickly violet, draining warmth so fiercely frost spidered across the altar stone. Sansa did not wait for diplomacy. She signaled. Stormwolf archers, loose dragonglass arrowheads, shattering robes, severing chants. Flames guttered. Some zealots fled. Others drew knives. Gendry charged, hammer swinging. Duvarus raised his own red-stained staff, intoning a counter-prayer of renewal. Where zealot fire met his words, sparks extinguished like tears. Sansa herself sprinted to the brazier. Frost stung her cheeks, breath billowed. She clamped iron tongs on the white shard, yanked it free. It shrieked. A crystalline keening only she seemed to hear, fought her grip with psychic cold. Her gauntlets iced. She staggered but did not drop it. Gendry's arms surrounded her, shielding. Together they thrust the shard into a prepared lead-glass casket, lined with dragonglass dust. Lid slammed. The shriek cut off. Warmth crept back. Zealot leaders lay bound, whimpering. Sansa surveyed the raised grove. Fruit trees desiccated, black rot creeping. "We'll burn what's lost," she ordered. Then seed again. Duvarus bowed, to her, not his god. The prisoners revealed the existence of a greater relic, a fractured meteor fragment worshipped deep within the ruined prison fort of the Night Fort, sold to them by an opportunist smuggler. They had chipped shards during rituals, believing them embers of R'hllor's judgment. Sansa's gut chilled anew. Night Fort sat within Empire lines, but remained a ruin no crew dared rebuild for its haunted lore. Now, it housed a weapon. She weighed returning north, but another raven diverted her. Lyanna reported a diplomatic breakthrough. The free folk, inspired by mirror harvests, sought seats on provincial councils to share new ice wheat strains adapted to ash twilight. They requested Sansa's presence for ratification. Meanwhile, Nightfort whispered threats southwards. She could not part herself in twain. She made swift counsel at Deepwood Motte. Gendry volunteered to lead a containment force to Nightfort. storm steel fences, red priest purification, boreal mage wards, while she continued to the free folk summit. They embraced beneath dripping pines. Luck is the residue of design, she told him. Design is the residue of stubborn wives, he countered, grinning despite shadow in his eyes. They parted, he northeast along the shore, she east then north across the frosted plains. The summit convened on a windswept plateau east of the Fist of the First Men, where free folk chieftains raised hide tents between buried weirwood roots. Sansa arrived to drums echoing across snow. Giantsbane greeted her with bone-crushing hug. "Thought you'd send quills," he thundered. "Glad you brought claws." He gestured to Stormwolf escort. Within the largest tent, 50 free folk spokespeople sat in ragged semicircle opposite northerner envoys. Yet no weapons lay unsheathed. Sansa spoke of partnership. Seed folds, trade corridors, boreal scholarships for wide-eyed spearwives. In return, the free folk pledged seasonal migration routes to avoid orchard trampling, and warriors to patrol mirror fields from zealot harm. The pact sealed with mingled mead and snowberry wine. During celebration, a raven alighted on Sansa's arm. Gendry's cipher. She stepped outside to read by torch. Night fort secured. Shard heart dormant, but he uncovered smuggler network trading pieces to southern cults. He pursued leads to Skagos. All well thus far, but resources thin. He requested additional scholars versed in crystal poisoning. Relief and worry tangled. She penned reply. Reinforcements en route, caution. She trusted his hammer but trusted fate less. 3 days later, storms burst from the shivering sea. Unseasonal, violent, forcing her convoy to shelter in Frostfang passes. Wind screamed like dying gulls, tents ripped. In snow-stung dark, a scout stumbled bleeding. Raiders struck supply wagons. Attackers wielded weapons that froze wood on contact, star shard blades. Her heart lurched. The zealot blight extended further. She rallied guards, rode into white fury. They found the supply wagons hacked apart, crates smashed, but no corpses. Only statues of ice shaped like men mid-flee, skin translucent blue inside frost shells. Among shards lay Bravosi surveyor uniforms. Apparently, the bank's observers journeyed north to witness treaty fruits. Sansa felt cold guilt. Her initiative brought them into this. Tracks led toward Skagos ferry routes. She realized Gendry had pursued same thieves. 2 fronts converged. She called war council under Cracked Ridge. Decision: split forces. Samwell and Duvaris escorted free folk delegates to safety. Sansa and a hand-picked vanguard would sail to Skagos' haunted shores. The sea crossing proved nightmare. Gale-flung icebergs, water as black as pitch. But Wex Pike, veteran Ironborn pilot now loyal to Empire, steered them through. Skagos loomed, a fortress of jagged stone and legend. Under a blood-dimmed dawn they rode into a cove clogged with kelp. Smoke feathered above cliffs. Within a crumbling watchtower, they found Gendry and his Smith Knights besieging a cult stronghold. Blades of violet crystal clashed against storm steel. Sparks of frostfire ignited air. Gendry hammered through a stone lintel, clearing path. Zealot defenders scattered but flung star shards that burst into clouds of freezing dust. Sansa's force flanked. They were. Arrows of dragonglass grounded shards harmlessly. Deeper inside lay the meteor fragment, larger than any yet seen, suspended on bronze chains above a pit filled with black sand. It pulsed with a heartbeat of luminous indigo, throwing kaleidoscopic shadows. Cult adepts ringed it, chanting. Sansa counted dozens, too many for direct assault before they dropped chains and shattered crystal, unleashing frostfire. She spotted support columns cracked by time. Whispered plan to Gendry. While archers peppered zealots, he and 2 smiths scaled shadowed alcove, hammering spikes into mortar. On her signal, Gendry swung his hammer at the new pivot. The column gave with thunder. Roof slabs crashed, zealots screamed. The bronze chain post bent. The crystal swung, momentum tearing free. Instead of smashing, it plunged into black sandpit, snuffing violet glow beneath granular mire that absorbed energy like night, swallowing flame. Silence struck. Zealots fled or fell. Sansa descended, breath ragged, sand crunching. The meteor heart now dim under surface, heatless. She ordered immediate containment. Dragonglass salt layered, iron cage built around pitmouth. Duvaris later would bless and freeze seal. Losses tallied low, yet among fallen zealots, Sansa found Braavosi insignia, mercenaries hired by Rogar factions to pressure throne? Or renegade sect? Whatever balance they struck in King's Landing, extremists still lurked. She convened urgent conference via mirror heliograph. Tyrion pledged purge of any conspirators. Bank promised cooperation, their factor Remus horrified. Rogar denounced rogue agents, truth or facade. Sansa prepared evidence. During repairs, Gendry admitted he'd feared for her. She clasped his bandaged hand. We beat dragons once. We beat Starwhites. We'll beat greed next. At dawn over Skagos, the ash cloud finally split, revealing an expanse of sky blue as a young robin's egg. Sunlight struck the shattered watchtower, gilding storm steel shields. Sailors gasped. Sansa felt tears sting. Years since such pure hue shone. Mirrors helped, but nature at last joined the struggle. She dictated proclamation to all provinces. The sky returns. Not as boast but beacon. Work remained, cleansing corrupted orchards, negotiating with Braavos oversight boards, integrating free folk seats. Boreal College prepared lightning engine turbines to harness wall vents. Even the Citadel planned joint symposium on celestial geology. Months later, festivals across Empire lit paper lanterns shaped like wolves and stags chasing one another across rivers. Children nibbled fruit, once thought lost. In Old Town, archmaesters and boreal deans signed the compact of the twin flames. Knowledge shared, no monopoly. In Dorne, mirrors redirected harsh sun into salt ponds, blooming spice gardens anew. In the Reach, a harvest carnival crowned the first Frostheart queen, an 8-year-old orphan who grew the largest ash peach under mirror light. Sansa and Gendry returned to Winterfell beneath banners of silver and indigo. Lyanna awaited with new plans. Steam rail schematics linking White Harbor to Moat Cailin, power drawn from core vents. Sansa led her present to the gathered lords. They listened to the young voice shaping worlds. That evening, mother and daughter walked the quiet godswood. The heart tree's face glowed in lantern hush. Sansa told Lyanna how once, as a girl, she dreamt only of songs and gallant knights, and how life had forged her beyond such simple frames. Lyanna, eyes bright as the new sky, answered that she dreamed of machines singing with rivers, of stars not to worship but to befriend. Sansa smiled, hearing the echoes of her younger hope transmuted into something stronger. When night fell, the women of the Weirwood, an order of free folk seers and northern acolytes, lit candles afloat on the moat, each flame mirrored by sky newly cleared. Sansa stood beside Gendry on the ramparts, hand in his. Below, empire and nature danced in fragile harmony. She breathed chill air, cleansed of soot. Somewhere a forge rang out, steel upon steel, a lullaby and a promise. She knew tempests would rise again, greedy lords, restless cults, the unknown lurking beyond Mapper's edges. But she also knew that anvil and mirror, starfire and barley sprig, hammer and parchment, these tools, wielded with honor, could kindle dawns no tyrant could quench. In the hush of that long-awaited clear night, the Northern Empire did not roar or boast. It listened to the crackle of torches, the murmur of rivers, the faint hum of far-distant vents, and the steady heartbeat of its people. And in that listening lay its truest strength, the resolve to keep forging, keep learning, keep the sky bright for all who sought its light.